happy Sunday. I'm your girl, Sun Fashionista. And guess what, y'all? A lot's been going on, and we need to get into it, okay? So, we have some updates today regarding the KC-135 that went down late last week. We also have some updates on Operation Epic Fury. We're going to get into some developments regarding the Strait of Hormuz and things escalating over there. There are some Marines and sailors that are being deployed into that region. And we also have updates on what happened over at Old Dominion University as well as at the Michigan Synagogue, to name a few. So we have a lot that we're going to touch today. So we're going to go ahead and get into our first topic, which is going to be the KC-135 that went down late last week. So, y'all, there were confirmed to be 6 fatalities. And so 3 were from Beale Air Force Base out in California, and 3 were from Rickenbacker and a Shagart unit in Columbus, Ohio. So we're going to go ahead and get into those new developments.
Get right to breaking news. U.S. Central Command now says all 6 service members involved in a plane crash in Iraq are dead. They say the refueling plane crashed after an incident with another plane in western Iraq and say it was not caused by hostile or friendly fire. Meanwhile, officials say more than 800,000 people have been displaced in Lebanon as Israel expands its offensive there. Let's bring in ABC's Matt Rivers in Beirut, senior Pentagon reporter Louis Martinez, and senior White House correspondent Selena Wang for more. Louis, what's the latest on this plane crash in Iraq?
All 6 individuals who were aboard that Air Force KC-135 mid-air refueling tanker are now confirmed to be deceased. Earlier today, we had gotten word that 4 of the 6 were now confirmed to be deceased, but now all who were aboard. Typically, the crew of a KC-135 is about 3 individuals, 2 pilots, as well as the boom operator who handles that long boom that connects to another plane to refuel it. Sometimes you have additional crew members, depending on the mission. Potentially, if this was a long-duration flight, there might be a switchover of crews, and that's why there's double the number of individuals aboard this aircraft. Now, what we do know is that there was another KC-135 that was traveling with this one that went down in over western Iraq yesterday, and that refueler was able to land safely. Now, questions are being raised about what exactly may have happened because, again, U.S. Central Command says, and they're stressing emphatically that there was no hostile fire and no friendly fire. But sometimes for an aircraft of this size to go down, maybe there was some kind of a collision involved. And so that's one of the things that we keep asking, trying to find out whether that was the cause of this plane going down. Was there something mechanical? Was there something else? But either way, what we do know now is that all 6 aboard have now been confirmed, and that brings the number of U.S. service members who have been killed and since the start of Operation Epic Fury is now 13.
Matt, 1 in 7 people in Lebanon have been displaced by Israel's offensive there. What's it like in Beirut right now?
Well, it's only going to get more intense, I think, Diane. We're going to see more people displaced because we're seeing more and more conflict really growing by the day across the entire country. Here in Beirut, we've seen actually a slightly fewer number of airstrikes here in the city proper, at least so far today. But in the south, the Israeli military has already been carrying out airstrikes today. They're saying they're targeting Hezbollah infrastructure across the southern part ahead of what is likely to be some sort of ground invasion by the Israeli military in the coming days. We have no sense of timeline, but the Israeli military already moving thousands of additional troops into the northern part of Israel in preparation for what would be a very bloody battle in the southern part of the country. And to that end, we know that the Israeli military trying to lay the groundwork here across the country to weaken Hezbollah, not only with Israeli military activity, but also with an information campaign. This is one of the leaflets that was dropped here in the country earlier today by the Israeli military. And in part on here, what it says is that it urges the Lebanese people and the Lebanese government to try and disarm Hezbollah, to turn away from Hezbollah as a fighting force and as a governing force effectively here in Lebanon. So clearly Israel trying to fight a battle on 2 fronts here, unclear if they could ever be successful with that.
And Selena, the president just did an interview with Fox News a few minutes ago. We heard from the war secretary and chairman of Joint Chiefs this morning. What's the president saying about this war now?
Yeah, that was a lengthy interview. It was taped on Thursday night, but it aired on Fox just moments ago. And the president provided no further clarity on how long this war is going to last for or what success looks like. But the president continued to boast about what he sees as a military success of Operation Epic Fury. The president saying that he's currently being, quote, nice to Iran amid this ongoing war. He also called this a, quote, little excursion, as saying that this war would be over when he feels it. And when the president was pressed again about when the war would end, the president said, quote, when I feel it. He mentioned about feeling it in his bones. Now, this is amid all of the fluctuations in the energy markets, as Americans have seen gas prices now going up every day for almost 2 straight weeks. But the president downplaying the economic impact of this war, as he continued to do during that Fox News interview. But behind the scenes, the Trump administration is scrambling to try and ease the pressure. The Treasury Secretary says the U.S. will temporarily lift sanctions on Russian oil, which is, of course, a big win for Vladimir Putin. The Treasury Secretary said that is unfortunate that Russia will financially benefit from this, but he did say that he hopes this will only be a small period in which the country will benefit in this way. But look, huge questions remain, of course, among the American public, among lawmakers, about how long the president intends for this military conflict to last for. The president giving no further clarity.
All right, Louis.
Okay, y'all. So as you saw here, they stated that they do have 6 confirmed to have been unalived during the KC-135 collision. The second KC-135 was able to land safely, and I do have another video where it shows you kind of how the plane looks. A little bit of damage on the tail part of the plane. So I'm really curious as to what happened. The other crew survived. I would think that they probably have some ideas and some intel as to what was going on up there. Not sure, but they're investigating, and we'll get more information, I'm sure, as we come, right? Also, what do you guys think about the president calling this war, if you will, a excursion? What are your thoughts on that? And before, when he originally went into this Operation Epic Fury, he was saying that he looked at it being about 5 weeks. And so now he's saying, okay, there isn't like a time frame, which you don't want anyone to really know what your limits are, right? So it's like, okay, he did say initially, okay, maybe 5 to 6 weeks. Things are going a little bit differently than what they probably anticipated, I would assume. Not sure. But what I will say is, I saw where a lot of different commentators had a bit of concern with him saying that he'll know when it's over with when he feel it in his bones. Like they really wasn't liking that terminology. I saw where a gentleman, he's like a ex-military or maybe retired military person, and he was saying that from a military perspective that they have different like metrics and targets and strategies that they're working towards, and that it won't be just a feeling, is what the gentleman had said, right? So, what do you guys think? Let me know in the comments. For those who are new here, welcome to the check-in. Hope you decide to stick around and chat with me. We have Mr. Lou, and you know it here. Welcome. We have Samara. I hope I said that right. Welcome to the check-in. Glad that you're here. And I'm doing well. How are you doing? Okay. So we also have another video here where we're gonna see a little bit of the damage to that Beale Air Force Base, KC-135, and they're gonna give us the names of the individuals who, were deceased. So we'll see a little bit more about those heroes, if you will. So let's get into that.
We're also learning the names of the 6 U.S. service members who were killed in that crash of a refueling aircraft in western Iraq.
KTLA's Lindsay Pena is live in the news center with the latest developments tonight. Hi, Lindsay.
Hi, Karine and Rick. 12 U.S. service members have now been killed since the war in Iran began. A 13th died of a medical issue. With more Marines set to deploy to the region, this is the largest U.S. military buildup in the Middle East we've seen in a decade. As the U.S. and Israel continue to strike, so does Iran, now threatening to hit major targets in the United Arab Emirates. Days after their plane went down supporting the war in Iran, the identities of the 6 airmen aboard a military refueling aircraft which crashed in Iraq were released. Major John A. Klinner, 33, Captain Ariana Savino, 31, and Tech Sergeant Ashley B. Pruitt, 34, were assigned to the 6th Air Refueling Wing at MacDill Air Force Base, Florida. Captain Seth Koval, 38, Captain Curtis Angst, 30, and Technical Sergeant Tyler H. Simmons, 28, were assigned to the 121st Air Refueling Wing at Rickenbacker Air National Guard Base in Columbus, Ohio. The Chief of the National Guard writing in a post on Instagram, "Our thoughts, prayers, and heartfelt condolences to their families, wingmen, and the entire tanker community." The incident remains under investigation, but Central Command said the loss of the aircraft was not due to hostile or friendly fire.
Okay. So these young men and women, they were at best like mid-30s, right? A lot of life left in the, that they had ahead of them. So, thank them for their service, and I know that it's a lot for their families. I did see a video where one of the gentlemen that was from Rickenbacker, his family got interviewed, I want to say yesterday, and it was just so sad um to see, just the grief and the unbelievingness of their only child, being taken away. So, yeah, it is I mean, there's people that are losing their life on both sides, and I have just as much empathy as well. But we're gonna also take a look at the aircraft damage. Let's get into that, y'all.
It's day 14 of the war with Iran. Here's ABC's Ian Pennell.
Tonight, new images of one of the two planes involved in a deadly crash of a U.S. refueling jet, killing all 6 American crew members. Officials say 2 KC-135 jets were over friendly airspace in western Iraq on a combat mission, when one went down for reasons that have yet to be explained. This one landing safely in Israel. Images obtained by CAN 11 showing damage to the tail section. An urgent investigation now underway. The Pentagon saying the crash was not due to hostile or friendly fire.
War is hell. War is chaos. And as we saw yesterday with the tragic crash of our KC-135 tanker, bad things can happen. American heroes, all of them.
In a further expansion of the war, the Pentagon tonight sending 5,000 Marines and sailors aboard 3 Navy amphibious ships to the Middle East. Officials stressing the deployment doesn't mean those Marines will be used as a ground force in Iran, but they do have that capability.
Interesting. So they're going to send 5,000 Marines and sailors to this part of the region, and to do what if they're not going to be boots on the ground? I was listening somewhere, and they were saying it's going to take maybe a couple of weeks for those soldiers to make it there. So I guess they're trying to, have them en route in case it's needed. But I believe they're being sent there to protect the Kharg Island. As you may have known, they U.S. bombed that area on yesterday. They did not affect the oil production, but Trump said that he may reconsider that if certain things happen to the Strait of Hormuz, right? But yeah, as you guys saw in the video, you did see a little bit of damage to that tail of the aircraft that had the bill sign on it. I'm wondering if they may have had like a little bit of a run-in up there in the skies, but won't speculate. But they'll have the report out soon enough, right, and let us know what took place up there. But very, very sad, very sad. Um, yeah, very sad. So I have a couple of videos of people who are in the military, and one gentleman who actually flew this type of aircraft, and he was able to shed some light on some things regarding it. He's gonna be the next video after this one I'm about to play, but it's always good to get perspective from people who've actually been in the aircraft and have a little bit of insight. So we're gonna go ahead and get into that. Um, let's do it.
CENTCOM says this was not due to hostile fire or friendly fire. We're joined now by Pennsylvania Democratic Representative Chrissy Houlihan. She served in the U.S. Air Force and is a member of the Armed Services and Intelligence Committees in the House. This just happened, so I know what we know about it, what you know about it might be very limited, but can you give us any idea of what happened or what this sounds like to you, an Air Force veteran?
Sure. So this is a really large refueling aircraft. There are hundreds of them in service, mostly in times like this, doing exactly what they're designed for, which is to refuel both bombers and also smaller jets, as an example. And they fly with a boom that is able to attach to a smaller or larger plane and deliver fuel. So that extends the range of each of these planes very considerably. It's sort of a leapfrog effect from one place to another. And so it is, without any more information than you have, entirely possible that there was some sort of an accident in the process of refueling that would have involved both aircraft, and that one might have gone to safety, as the tweet seems to indicate, and one might have gone possibly to ground. And there seem to be some sort of efforts on recovery of the aircraft and also of rescue. And so that's effectively what we know. And what we also know is that this is the cost of war. It's enormously complex. The logistics of getting all of this stuff, people and product, across oceans is an enormously hazardous effort, and one that requires everything to go exactly right. And so we won't know probably for a while what actually happened, but that's effectively what's likely to have happened.
Obviously, the greatest cost of war has to do with our fallen service members and our wounded service members. We know of 7 who have been killed, more than 140 wounded, and that was from a few days ago. We don't know what this will result in this accident. Hopefully nothing, but it's tough to say.
Singer piloted these exact planes in the Iraq and Afghanistan wars. The former congressman joins us now. So, Congressman, you flew this type of plane for 2 years, including during combat. It obviously a critically important aircraft in the fleet of the Air Force. What's your reaction to the news that one has gone down? According to CENTCOM, it was not due to hostile fire or friendly fire.
Yeah, I mean, it's terrible news, obviously. You know, you're always wondering if you know the crews, but it's been a while since I've flown it. But, you know, what the tanker flies, it's inherently safe, but it does do some dangerous things. You know, obviously air refueling, 2 planes are getting very close to each other. And then sometimes these planes fly formation, and especially at nighttime. I don't know if this happened at night, but nighttime formation, when you have your transponders off and you're using what's called an air-to-air TACAN, that's stuff that can get dangerous. And, you know, this is the first tanker to have crashed. One went down in Afghanistan maybe 10 years ago. But obviously our thoughts and prayers are with the crew and the families. Unfortunately, the Air Force took parachutes off of these things about 10 or 15 years ago to try to save a little bit of weight for gas. And
Let me stop there, right? Did you guys hear him just say that there was a decision made about 10 years ago to remove the parachutes off of the KC-135 so they can be able to save fuel? Now, I don't know if that parachute would have been helpful in the circumstances of what happened in this particular incident, but that's quite interesting to me. What do you guys think?
I don't know if this is a situation where those could have come in handy, but I think it's sad that they took them off, unfortunately.
Are there, I mean, what kind of emergency procedures would there be aboard this type of an aircraft?
So there's emergency procedures for everything except if you end up colliding with another plane, because you never know what that's going to look like, how it's going to happen. Basically, if you have a collision, the whole thing is try to get the plane safely landed as quickly and safely as you can. There is a procedure called a breakaway, which is when you're actually refueling another aircraft, in which the tanker puts the throttles full forward and climbs while the receiving aircraft drops. That I've had a few close calls on that one, but there are procedures. But if this was like an air-to-air flying in formation, they accidentally hit each other, at that point it's just do everything you can as a crew to get it on the ground. And it sounds like the other aircraft was able, thankfully, to safely land.
Interesting. So we just had 2 former military members. I'm not sure they're both retired or not, but they've had experience with these planes. And yeah, like I'm still a little floored about the person saying that they got rid of the parachutes. My goodness. We have Mr. Lou here saying apparently that saves about 800 pounds of weight. Not having parachutes. Yeah, I mean, I guess I can understand they did a risk cost analysis, I'm sure. The last crash of this type of plane, they said was like maybe 10 years ago. So I guess they figured, you know what, this aircraft, is pretty benign. We don't have a higher incident rate. And so maybe they decided, okay, the likelihood of us having a aircraft fail is very low. So they made that decision, right? So that could be why they did it. I'm not sure. Then we have Siobhan Kamour, the core here. Welcome to the check-in, saying Iran is a jihadi country. Okay. Then we have Bill Burrows here. Welcome to the check-in. We have Ron Ligon saying USA got sleeper cell. Trump isn't hesitating. Okay. So yes, y'all. Okay, Mr. Lou says I would rather have parachutes. Yeah, yeah, I would think so. But I'm not. Yeah, I'm interested to. I'm really interested in hearing the report that they're gonna release at some point regarding the circumstances of what happened in that incident, and and could a parachute have been helpful to those folks? I'm sure that's gonna be something asked. They're gonna relook at that decision they made, 10, 14 years ago, according to the gentleman here. So next up, we have a family whose son, nephew, cousin, was one of the six that passed away. So let's go ahead and check them out.
And Tech Sergeant Tyler Simmons was just 28 years old, and with him being an only child, his
28.
death is one of tremendous sacrifice. Tonight, with heavy hearts, Tyler's family shares memories of the man they say served with honor. Heartbreak is the only way to describe what Tech Sergeant Tyler Simmons' family is experiencing. The man who still loved adult night at Skate Zone and lit up the room with his personality and had his mother's dimples is gone.
He had $1 million smile. When people see my cousin, they're gonna be like, that smile was gonna take him places, and it took him to his dream job.
But as they gather to watch video of Tyler working that dream job, love and pride is now overshadowed by unimaginable grief.
Tyler's gone. Oh, help me, Jesus.
The tech sergeant was one of 6 airmen who died Thursday night when their KC-135 Stratotanker crashed in western Iraq. This family, collateral damage.
He was truly an amazing man. And to do the job as an air refueler is a special person. You have to be kind of smart to do that. And, he was loving. He loved his dog, Grayson. He loved his family. He's loved his friend, Shayna. He's just that guy. And he would do anything for you.
Tyler's parents remember the exact time uniformed officers showed up at their door that night, 10 o'clock.
When he opened the door, he said, "Oh no." And I jumped up and ran in there, and they were lined up out on the porch. And I was like,
My.
You've got to be kidding me.
Cheryl Simmons never wanted her son to join the military. Tyler was their only child, but she says there was no stopping him. He loved his country and his job with the 121st Air Refueling Wing at Rickenbacker.
Tyler loved them people, and they loved him.
So much so, Cheryl says, while he served in security, superiors saw something special in Tyler and invited him to join a new team as a boom operator. He was the one transferring fuel from the Stratotanker aircraft to other military aircraft.
Once he got in the back of that airplane, that was it. He said, "I will retire from this, Mom. I will retire from this." I said, "Well, what about the pilot? You always wanted to be a pilot." "I'll do that with commercial after I retire from doing this."
Now, instead of looking forward to Tyler becoming a commercial pilot, getting married, having children, she and her husband are preparing to bury their only child.
And it stops. We're done. No children.
National and state leaders are reacting now to the deaths of the 6 airmen, including the 3 from Ohio. Ohio Governor Mike DeWine shared his condolences, saying he and Fran are deeply saddened by the news and offer their sincere condolences to their families.
Columbus Mayor Andrew Ginther extended his condolences to the family and friends of Tyler Simmons, asking people to keep his loved ones in their thoughts and prayers.
Representative Joyce Beatty from Ohio's 3rd District also sent her condolences, saying in part, "In Columbus and across the nation, we will always remember the sacrifice of Tyler and his fellow service members."
And we're going to continue.
Yeah, I just don't have anything else to say. I mean, my condolences to, to the family and to all the families that have had someone, lost. Thus far, 13, I think it is, on the US side. And as President Trump said a week or so ago, and there will be more. And I hope that there's a way that we can kind of like put a stop to it. But honestly, it just seems to continue to be escalating. You know what I'm saying? But we'll see. So we have Ron here saying, "God bless USA." Mr. Lewis saying, "I'm heavy with the flying dove." Yes. So as you guys may have heard, President Trump has issued the word for Kharg Island to be bombed. And Kharg Island is very instrumental. It's very instrumental in how Iran gets their oil production out. It's kind of at like the mouth, if you will, of where the Strait Hormuz is. Strait of Hormuz. So it's very critical for their oil production. I want to say like very shallow areas around it where you can get the bigger ships up to it in order to get the oil moved up out of that area. So it's very, very much so important to Iran. So I guess with Iran, kind of stopping or closing the Strait of Hormuz, um, Trump decided to go over to Kharg Island and do some things over there. Now, Iran would say, "Well, no, it's not closed, but it's it's closed to folks who are doing and who's not Iran." I want to say the people, was it Thailand? It was one country where they were able to work out a deal to get at least one of their ships through, I think yesterday. But we'll get more into it. So let's see what they got to say about Kharg Island.
Minutes ago, the president saying the U.S. military, quote, totally obliterated every military target in Iran's crown jewel, Kharg Island. The president just speaking. What did he say?
Well, before we get to what he said, I do want to go into this breaking news because moments after he spoke, he talked about Kharg Island. And this is really a big deal. I mean, 90% of Iran's oil exports go through Kharg Island. There had been questions as to why the United States or Israel had not bombed Kharg Island, particularly given its economic strength for Iran. It is a place, it is kind of a sensitive area, and it's clearly something that the U.S. could have targeted. President Trump had been asked questions about this. He kind of evaded the answer earlier today. Now, here's what he said. Because there is so much oil infrastructure in this area, he specifically says, "I have chosen not to wipe out the oil infrastructure on the island. However, should Iran or anyone else do anything to interfere with the free and safe passage of ships through the Strait of Hormuz, I will immediately reconsider this decision." There is a reason why this is so important. Earlier today, I was talking to White House officials. They said there was going to be actions as early as this weekend, as early as this evening, that were going to show how the U.S. was working towards trying to get these ships through the Strait of Hormuz, getting the Strait of Hormuz opened again. That is clearly what they were referring to, was these explosions in Kharg Island, a place that had seemed like it was going to be off limits. Clearly here he is saying, open up the Strait of Hormuz or else you're going to see more bombs dropping and more strikes in the area. Now, we did also hear from President Trump just seconds before he sent that Truth Social post saying that those Navy escorts were going to start happening soon. I was told by White House officials they were going to have to clear that area. They have to make sure it was safe for the military, that they were going to have to get the resources there. But he did say the word soon. And one of the more interesting things we heard him say is that he has officially taken any sort of timeline off the table. He was asked specifically about his 4 to 5 weeks comments, and he said that he couldn't give a timeline anymore. So I know that we had been reporting that the administration had been saying this, but this is, Donald Trump here officially saying that 4 to 5 week timeline is off the table, and instead replacing it with a big question mark.
Talk to us about the significance of this moment and that threat, too, that Kristen told us about, of the president basically saying, hey, I left a little bit in terms of oil infrastructure, but if you don't do what I say, we'll come back.
So, Erica, Kharg Island, you see it on the map there. It's about 25 miles off the coast of Iran, very northern part of the Gulf. It is the valve for Iran's oil economy. And of course, they're almost wholly dependent on their oil economy for their own government revenues. The Gulf is very shallow, and Kharg Island, that small island there, it's about 8 by 9 square miles. It has the deep water ports where tankers can pull in, get filled up, and then go through the Strait of Hormuz and onward to where they might delivering their oil. Of course, Iranian oil is illicit oil. It's under U.S. sanctions. But that is basically, without those terminals and without that island being operational, Iran cannot export its oil. And that's why it's so significant. I take this as the U.S. saying, okay, you guys are trying to use this pressure point, which the new Supreme Leader declared it yesterday in the Strait of Hormuz. We have pressure points too on you. So, knock this off. That's what they're trying to say. Mm-hmm. But I also see, Erica, with the deployment of a U.S. Marine Force, the possibility of more military operations on that island. I think that's highly risky. The Iranians can respond to that. But clearly, bottom line, this conflict is not coming to an end anytime soon. It was
Certainly
a 4 to 6 weeks was said at the beginning. That's basically the CENTCOM plan. I think it might go on a little bit longer than that.
And the president, as Kristen was just reporting, taking that off the table. When we look at this moment and the Kharg Island piece of it now that is being brought in, I mean, Brett walked us through the significance of this. Yeah. But the fact that, as he pointed out, we have potentially this unit of up to 2,500 Marines and sailors going in. They are also well-versed in combat operations. Yes. With all of this playing out tonight, is that how you would envision perhaps these forces being used, is perhaps needing to go to Kharg Island?
Perhaps, but I'd be reluctant to put boots on the ground in this area for a number of reasons. The Iranians can come down and they can block the Strait of Hormuz. The Strait of Hormuz is a particularly unpleasant place to operate in any time of the year, particularly at night. Having been there during the Iranian hostage crisis on a nuclear aircraft carrier, it's a problem. And, boots on the ground, I've been through this number of wars, served with a bunch of people who spent a fair amount of time in Hanoi as visitors under very unpleasant circumstances, and were great heroes. But if we start putting boots on the ground, how do we ensure that they're protected? How do we ensure that they get out if we have to? So that's the initial problem I see.
There's a lot of red flags for you.
Oh, absolutely.
And when we look at where things stand, Nazila, this moment, can you put in perspective to us, Brett laid out how significant it is from a military perspective, but Nazila, lay out for us what this actually means to Iran.
Well, yeah.
I think this is entering the war to a different level. This is going to be a new chapter in this war. Kharg Island is the main point where Iran is exporting its oil. And if they can't export oil, or if they lose control over the island, it's going to hurt the Revolutionary Guards Corps in a major way. And I think, considering what happened today inside the country and the statements that we were hearing from Iranian officials, they are trying to deflect attention from such realities. Today, Tehran came under quite intense bombing. There was a bombing right in the middle of the demonstrations where some of the leaders showed up. And all we heard from them was that Iranian leaders are there among their own people while the bombs were dropping. The country's infrastructure is getting destroyed. Ordinary Iranians are the ones who are paying the big price for this. But the reality is that the country's oil flow is under question, depending on how much Kharg Island has been damaged. And then the big question about the power vacuum. The statement that came out yesterday has raised more questions than given answers. There are questions about the new Supreme Leader's whereabouts, his condition. And why didn't he deliver the speech himself? And why didn't he have someone he could trust who could deliver it? So these are really big questions, and I'm afraid we are entering a totally different chapter now.
In terms of this totally different chapter, Brett, as you were just saying,
Definitely a
this
different
signifies
chapter.
to you far beyond 4 to 6 weeks, right? And the president saying, basically taking the timeline off the table.
Well, we already knew it was going to be more than 4 to 6 weeks. Like, we knew that. And with this latest move of the Kharg Islands and the bombing and all that, it's definitely going to be longer than 4 to 6 weeks. And it doesn't appear to me that Iran is backing down. I did see where the president of Russia stated that he provided to Iran some drones. So we have President Trump saying, well, they're down 90% of this, 90% of that, right? But yet these Iran forces are steadily, returning fire, if you will. And that's because they are having their allies provide them with additional resources. So the president of Russia came out with that today, actually. Let's keep it going. Oh, for those who are watching, thank you for being here. Please consider liking the live stream as well as subscribing to the channel. Thank you. Here we go.
How important is this weekend, I would even say, these next couple of days? What is that going to tell us in terms of the trajectory here?
I think I've been saying since the beginning that the military plan is about 4 to 6 weeks. I think that was a decent assumption. There was some thought earlier this week that given the economic pressure, perhaps President Trump would just declare victory and cut it short. I now think the way this is developing, that's actually not going to happen. And look, Iran decided to play this card of the Strait of Hormuz. And the supreme leader said we will use it as a pressure valve. And that is going back all the way to the Carter Doctrine, Erica. We have a doctrine that outside powers or other powers, including Iran, cannot seize this territory. And if they do, it's a vital interest of the United States, and it'll be repelled by military force. So it's a very serious issue. I am not surprised now that the United States is now moving to perhaps organize a naval coalition with coalition partners. I have to say, that is extremely difficult work. I did this in the Red Sea. We developed a coalition of almost 20 countries. The UK, Denmark were very effective there to try to open a passage called the Bab el-Mandeb Strait, which was under fire from Iranian weapons fired by a group in Yemen called the Houthis. But it's still hard work. Even with that coalition, shippers did not have the confidence to make that passage, just given the threats. So this is hard, difficult, tedious work. It'll take weeks. But I mean, I do think it's important to try to get control of this so that Iran cannot hold this pressure valve, as the new supreme leader declared it, assuming it was him yesterday. It's very important. So bottom line, this is not ending anytime soon. I just go back to my first point.
Exactly. It's not going to end no time soon. It's not ending no time soon. And that's why they're going ahead and sending over those 5,000 Marines and sailors. They can go ahead and get a head start to be in position. So, yeah, that's that. So we also have a comment from Pete Hegseth regarding the closure of Hormuz. So, okay. So we got Alan Jordan here saying this president is nothing more than a liar. And I was asking about which ones. I had mentioned the president of Russia, but he said this one. Then Lou was saying, yep, art imitating live, imitating art. I think it was Battlefield 3. And Alan is saying, and watch what happens with Cuba next. Everything he does is illegal. Then we got Brian saying, here we go again. Watch, wag the dog. Oh, hey, Mr. Brian McKinney. Welcome to the check-in. I'm not sure about all that. But okay, let's go ahead and get into what Mr. Pete Hegseth had to say regarding the Strait of Hormuz. I want to say someone of the press asked a question about them not planning for it, and he didn't seem to take that too kindly. Let's look at that.
Mr. Secretary, you have said that the U.S. military has essentially aerial superiority, naval superiority over Iran, yet we're not escorting ships through the Strait of Hormuz. Why? How did you not plan for this?
We planned for it. We recognize it. Because ultimately we want to do it sequentially in a way that makes the most sense for what we want to achieve and ensure that we're sending the right signals to the world when we do so. So when Chris Wright speaks or we speak, it's based on a full assessment of what we're up against, what we want to say to the world, how that we want them to see and understand the conflict. It's like this whole idea of the war widening. That's what the press wants to make it look like it's widening and chaos is ensuing. No, we're actually closing in on grabbing hold of and controlling what objectives we want to achieve and how we want to achieve them. It's called shaping operations and setting the conditions. But when you shape the environment, you don't always tell. I mean, foolish political leaders and foolish military leaders of the past will hang an exact deadline on it. Or here's exactly when we'll do what we're going to do. Or here's how long it's going to take us. And then if you meet that, maybe you meet it. But if you don't, you fail. And if you're far beyond, we know exactly what we're shaping and why. We're sending those signals working across the interagency. The Strait of Hormuz is something we've paid attention to from the beginning. And the American people can rest assured we will ensure that our interests are advanced, no doubt.
Okay, so he didn't really care for that question being asked, and I guess the gentleman, had a bit of he had a valid point because um if we're planning for this, then why do we have all these tankers sitting on either side of the strait, like a sitting duck, as they say, waiting to be hit? They don't want to go through that strait because they may be attacked by Iran. So as you guys know, on I think it was on Thursday morning, um Iran hit three different tankers out there. Yeah, they hit three of them. So it's like, and they said that basically, the strait is open, but if you're doing anything in support of America, the USA, then they are going to you are not considered a target, is what the folks in Iran said, right? So yeah, people, so I guess with that strait being right there by Iran, right? And you need to get all this product, this oil going through, like why would you not have, but it don't even matter because the tanker said, you know what, we're not going to go through there at all. They're like, we don't care about all the insurance that you're adding, we don't care about a Navy escort. But y'all, that the narrowest part of that strait is very, very small. So I don't know if there's even enough area for them to be escorted. I would think you would want, I mean, I don't know if that can be done. What it sounds like to me is that, if I remember right correctly, is that you have enough space for maybe ships to go in either direction and then like maybe a 2 mile buffer on each side. So I don't know how they would manage that, if that makes sense. But we'll see. But yeah, I guess I get the reporter's question, why didn't you guys already have something in place in mind? But on the same side, it's like, okay, you can't just go ahead and have the ship show up and just be waiting. You're kind of tipping off your adversary. So I understand you have to kind of weigh your options when it comes to what you're doing out there, if that makes sense. What do we have here? We have user Ellie4. Um, welcome to the check-in, saying Democrats lower the deficit and give us deflation and make the economy stronger. Then we have Alan saying F the end. Okay. Then we have the user saying also Republicans give us recession and inflation. Okay. We have Victor saying the Republicans don't tell the truth. Then we got Smooth Will in the house. Hey, Smooth. Welcome to the check-in. We have Ron saying something like the Panama Canal. He's talking about the Strait of Hormuz. Yes, very, very tight is what I'm gonna call it. But yeah, Alan says this place is a joke. It's because of Trump. See how this midterm goes. Yeah, we'll see how the midterm goes. Yeah. So we have Ronald Davis saying people are so used to lying to the public that they believe the rhetoric that they're spilling do their mouths. Any person that you educate knows that those people are just liars and evil. let me make this simple for all of y'all. They're not going to make it through to that point. They get so close, they're just going to blow up the tanker. That's going to block the other ships. Yeah, I mean, and they've shown that. And on the other day when they blew up, well, they shot a missile at 3 different crafts. They sure did. I think only one. I think the boats that are from Iran, they are going through. And I want to say it was Thailand. I think they had a agreement. It was one of the Asian companies that Asian communities that had an agreement, and their one ship went through. I think yesterday. So let's go ahead on and get back into it. So we're gonna get into the deployed aspect. So let's check that out.
U.S. airstrikes on Iran tonight. President Donald Trump sharing video of a bombing attack on Iran's Kharg Island. That's home to Iran's main oil export hub. And we've also learned the U.S. is deploying 5,000 Marines and sailors to the war zone. Eyewitness News reporter Michelle Fisher joining us now following all the new developments tonight. Michelle?
Mark, 2 weeks into this operation, there are few signs that things will end anytime soon. This despite promises from the president, who tonight is vowing harsher attacks on Iran's oil infrastructure if Tehran continues blocking ships in the Strait of Hormuz.
New footage tonight released by President Trump on X showing the U.S. bombing Iran's Kharg Island, which handles 90% of the nation's.
Yeah, let me say this. They just said that the president released, I guess, footage of Kharg Island being bombed on X. I'll tell you guys this. I don't recall ever seeing this much footage being available um, during a war where they're like really showing, the attacks. Like, y'all let me know, is that something that's been done in the past? Is this kind of new? I never really followed the war that closely, but I'm just asking because you people are putting these images on X, the former Twitter. I'm a little perplexed. Let's keep it going.
Oil exports. The president saying the U.S. didn't wipe out oil infrastructure, but obliterated military targets there.
Their Navy is gone, their Air Force is gone, most of their military is gone, their big threat is gone in every way.
But Iran is fighting back 2 weeks into Operation Epic Fury. Iran ramping up attacks on oil tankers and shutting the vital Strait of Hormuz, impacting global oil supplies. Gas prices rising with a national average now 72 cents higher since March 1st.
You're going to see a very big decrease in the price of gasoline, gas, anything having to do with energy as soon as this is ended.
The president unable to predict a timeline.
How long now do you think the war is likely to last? I can't tell you that. I mean, I have my own idea, but what good does it do? It'll be as long as it's necessary.
The Pentagon now deploying 5,000 Marines and sailors on 3 amphibious ships to the Middle East. Military officials saying the deployment does not mean the service members will be used on the ground in Iran, but they have that capability.
They keep saying they're not going to use the service members. I mean, are they just going over there just to be in the tents over there? I mean, or to be on the boat? Like, yeah, okay. If that's what they want to say, y'all. If that's what they want to say. So we have users saying George Bush 400% inflation and he bombed 2 wrong countries for 9/11. Then we have user also saying soldiers dying for Israel, not America, Republican propaganda. We got Ronald saying they ain't got no options. They shot an aircraft carrier, which had several ships there to protect it. And what you think they're going to do to an oil tanker? We are out of hand. All right. And like I said in the chat here, I went and got gas Friday night. It was $3.54 a gallon. The last time I went, probably a few weeks before that, it was under $3. So yeah, definitely already seeing the price of gas going up. Airfare is already going up. I bought a ticket so I can go home to see my parents, and it ended up being $253. Normally I can get a ticket for $105 round trip. Same exact, dates and times, if you will. So I'm already seeing the impacts of what's going on with the war here. But let's check out what they're saying about the gas prices.
Meantime, the U.S. offering a reward up to $10 million for 10 officials in Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, including the newly named Supreme Leader Mojtaba Khamenei. Mark?
All right, Michelle Fisher, thank you. Local gas prices keep rising because of the war in Iran. Take a look at today's prices from AAA compared to just last month. Prices across the 5 counties jumping by more than 80 cents. And some experts say they're not coming down just yet. Oil prices now sit at over $100 a barrel. Trading for oil begins at 6 p.m. on Sunday.
Interesting. And so, as you guys know, that Trump and some of the other countries, they decided to tap into their reserves to kind of put that out there to kind of help, with the cost of the oil barrels going up. But what I learned is that I guess over in Asia, about 80% of what leaves out of this area goes towards Asia for their necessities. So what's interesting also is that they're saying that China is still getting oil from Iran, but I don't know. But yeah. I don't know. You know what? They're getting what they need, and the rest is just gonna happen. They're trying. I guess they are also considered allies to Iran as well. So I think Trump is supposed to be heading over there to China in a couple of weeks to speak to their leadership. So we'll see how all that plays out, right? So we have someone here saying, hello. Hey, Prince Keys. Welcome to the check-in. We have Ron Langdon saying that what that is all about. Panama Canal 2.0 once we control access. Okay. So if you're here hanging out, watching with me, please feel free to go ahead and like the live stream, put me out there in the algorithm, and to support the channel by subscribing. I'd appreciate it. But let's go ahead and get into the Prime Minister. So the Prime Minister of Iran had quite a bit to say. So I'm going to play it and then maybe stop every now and again. But he was the one that told us before that they were waiting for the American troops to arrive on Iranian soil. So he's a very interesting character. So let's check him out.
I wanted to start with the news overnight that the U.S. has carried out a military strike on Kharg Island. The President of the United States said that for reasons of decency, I have chosen not to wipe out all the oil infrastructure on the island. However, should Iran or anyone else do anything to interfere with the free and safe passage of ships through the Strait of Hormuz, I will immediately reconsider this decision. Let me start by asking you about what has happened on Kharg Island and what is Iran's response to these strikes.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I think our armed forces have already answered that they would retaliate if our oil and energy infrastructure are attacked. And they will attack any energy infrastructure in the region which belongs to an American company or an American company is a shareholder. So the reaction would be clear. Last night, they have attacked Kharg Island and Abu Musa Island with, the artillery rocket system, HIMARS as they call it, which is a low-range rockets. And they have done it from the soil of our neighbors. And this is crystal clear that now they are using the territory of our neighbors to attack us by these kind of, rockets. And this is absolutely unacceptable.
Which neighbors, sir?
Well, these last night attacks were tracked by our forces, and now it is clear that they are fired from UAE, from 2 locations in the UAE, from in Ras Al Khaimah, and from a location very close to the city of Dubai. And it is very, dangerous that they use highly populated areas to launch, rockets against us. We would certainly retaliate, but we try to be careful not to attack any populated area.
Is there any sign that Iran is prepared to allow passage of the Strait of Hormuz. Will the Strait of Hormuz remain closed so long as this war continues?
Well, as a matter of fact, the Strait of Hormuz is open. It is only closed to the tankers and ships belong to our enemies, to those who are attacking us and their allies. Others are free to pass. Of course, many of them prefer not because of their security concerns. This has nothing to do with us. And at the same time, there are many tankers and ships who are passing through the Strait of Hormuz, and I can say that the strait is not closed, but it is only closed to American, Israeli, ships and tankers, and not to others.
Okay, let me stop there. So you heard what he said, right? He says that the Strait of Hormuz isn't closed, but it is closed to our enemies, Israel, United States, any of their allies. It is closed, and that others are choosing to not go through that strait. And he said it very, very calmly. And previously, he had said in this video that if you have a company on your land that is has an American shareholder or anything like that, they are considering you a possible target as well. So yeah, I mean they're very clear. He said they established their position. So yeah, let's keep it going.
We know that Iran has elected a new supreme leader, Mojtaba Khamenei. He has not been seen yet in public, though he did issue a statement yesterday. I'm sure you have heard the comments from the U.S. Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth, who has said that he claimed the supreme leader is wounded and likely disfigured. What is the status of the supreme leader, Mojtaba Khamenei?
Well, they have made so many claims like this. Yesterday, they said that all Iranian authorities are in the bunkers, but at the same time, the whole world saw our president, the Speaker of Parliament, everybody, the Secretary of our National Security Council, everybody was in the street among the people who demonstrated. So there are lots of accusations like that. They will see soon, I guess, that there is no problem with the new supreme leader. He sent his message yesterday, and he will perform his duties. He is performing his duties according to the Constitution, and he will continue to do that. I think by now, it should have been clear and it should have been known for everybody that our system is very well rooted in the society. The Islamic Republic is a system which is not dependent on any individual or any group of people. It is well established. It's a very well established political structure, and the deep state is doing its functions, is functioning, and everything is in place. So they shouldn't have any hope for anything happen to the individuals. The system is working. It worked properly after the assassination of and martyrdom of our supreme leader. You saw that nothing happened and everything remained in order, and still everything is under control.
I wanted to ask you about the war strategy from an Iranian perspective. Can you tell us right now, as you know, there has been reporting that both Russia and China are providing targeting intelligence to Iran to target either U.S. positions, facilities, infrastructure across the region. Can you confirm or deny whether Russia or China is providing military support, intelligence to Iran?
Well, Russia and China are our strategic partners, and we have had close cooperation in the past, which still continues, and that includes military cooperation as well. I'm not going into any details of that. A good cooperation with these two countries, politically, economically, even militarily, to say once again that this is not our war. This is an imposed war against us. We didn't start this war. It was an unprovoked, unwarranted, illegal act of aggression against us, and we are only defending ourselves, and we continue to defend ourselves as much as it takes, and as long as it takes, in order to end this war in a way that it won't be repeated in the future.
As you probably saw,
Let me say this. So I did see a video where the Russian president said that they provided drones to Iran. So I saw that come out today. We got Keithstown saying, no, Keith's on 58. Russia's not doing anything. China is doing little. Iran sucks. Then we got Connie Caro saying that's nice to know. China, Russia, go figure. Okay. Welcome to the check-in, y'all. Okay. Let's see what else we got going on here.
United Nations this week, UN Security Council passed a resolution condemning your attacks on your Arab neighbors. It received 130 co-sponsors, which is a very significant number. Your close allies that you just said are providing you support, Russia and China, they didn't veto that. They abstained from it, but they didn't veto it and allowed the resolution to pass. Do you think the global community has spoken clearly about the way Iran has conducted this war on its Arab neighbors with condemnation and calling on it to stop?
The Security Council is suffering from the lack of justice in its decisions and resolutions it makes. You know, how is it possible that the Security Council condemned us for defending ourselves and is not condemning the United States and Israel who started this aggression? So if they want to have a just, full decision or resolution which can work, they should consider all aspects of any event. You know, we are under attack. It was the United States and Israel who started this war. They deserve to be condemned, not us. What we are doing is, and this is why that, you know, so many countries have become hopeless about the role of the Security Council, including the United States, who has decided to go for its own board of peace, or even for the United States. The Council votes you know, politically and based on the interest of, you know, certain countries and not based on realities, based on justice.
You do acknowledge, though, that Iran is targeting civilian targets across the Gulf countries, right? Because, you know, I've spoken to officials across the region, and many of the targets that have been hit are clearly civilian buildings. Why is Iran targeting civilian buildings and airports and commercial ports in Gulf countries that made clear they are not involved in these attacks against your country?
No, it is clear that we are attacked from, unfortunately, their territories, from American bases and American military installations in the territory of the Persian Gulf countries. And this is very unfortunate. What we are doing as an act of self-defense is to targeting American bases, American installations, American assets, and American interests, which are unfortunately located in the territory of our neighbors. Just as an example, 2 days ago, the United States attacked one of our, you know, banks. They are doing, you know, they are attacking our, you know, cities and our and civilian targets. They attacked a school in Minab. It is very well known for the whole world. They have attacked some hospitals. Two days ago, they attacked a bank of Iran. A building belongs to a bank. And so we decided to retaliate in kind with the building into cities around us. So what we are doing is only the principle of an eye for an eye, which is very well known.
Let me ask you really quickly about the negotiations before the war started. Do you believe Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner were good faith negotiators conveying accurate information back to the White House about Iran's position during these negotiations? There's been some reports that you shouted at Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner, that you threatened that you had enriched uranium to make 11 nuclear weapons. I want you to set the record straight on those negotiations in the final days before the war.
Well, I don't know what they have conveyed to their boss. What I know is that on 26 February, when we met in Geneva, we were able to make a good progress. As Omani Foreign Minister, the intermediator said it was a significant progress. And before he posted his tweet, he read it to both delegations, and both delegations accepted that, yes, this is the right, the right saying about what we have made today. Significant progress. This is what we were able to do it on 26 February. Well, the things which are said by U.S. interlocutors, I do understand why they are saying those things. They want to justify an unjustifiable act of aggression. So they are trying to make some excuses for themselves. I never said that we are going to make bombs. I said that we have 440 kilos of 60% enriched material, and that was not a secret. That is what is mentioned in the reports of the IAEA. So I said that, look, this is mentioned in the report. This, if enriched more, can an unjustifiable act of aggression. So they are trying to make some excuses for themselves. I never said that we are going to make bombs. I said that we have 440 kilos of 60% enriched material, and that was not a secret. That is what is mentioned in the reports of the IAEA. So I said that, look, this is mentioned in the report. This, if enriched more, can be good enough for 10 bombs, as your own experts claims. So we are ready to give them away. We are ready to dilute them, to downblend them into lower degrees. And by saying that, I wanted to say that the concession that we are making is really big. But how they have interpreted that, I don't know. Maybe because the lack of enough knowledge, maybe because of their intentions to justify, as I said, the act of aggression, which cannot be justified. I hope that the true story of what happened on 26 February in Geneva would become known to the people soon.
Mr. Foreign Minister, thank you so much for your time.
A deal. That is the reality.
Mr. Foreign Minister, thank you so much for your time. We're out of time. We certainly appreciate you joining us. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Okay, so if I understood him correctly, he said that when they were negotiating, that they had offered to, I guess, to downgrade their enriched uranium. Is that what I understood? And I guess they were going to keep what they have, but they were going to downgrade it to where it wasn't going to be useful for WMD. Did I get that right, y'all? Let me know in the comments, y'all. That's what I think I heard. Yes. And so then he was just saying also that they're only attacking American and Israeli assets on their neighboring lands. And I guess he feels like, if America is coming for them, then they're gonna come for American assets on the neighboring countries. And so they don't understand why the United Nations Security Council was saying that they were out of line when they are, in their opinion and mindset, okay, although they're sitting on your land, neighbor, you're holding these assets. So this is fair game. That's kind of how they see it. Let me know if you guys see it differently. So we have okay. We have Ronald Davis saying, ma'am, listen to me. Please, you are a black person in America. They will literally kill our people. Then they would tell us they're going to change the law so cops can be held accountable. Ma'am, listen to me, please. You are a black person in America. They will literally kill our people. Then they will tell us they're going to change the law so cops can be held accountable. Right? Okay. Then Ronald says, ain't no way you surprised why folks are devils. Why would you give the cops more power? They came up this thing called officer safety. They already have enough things to stop black people for. Okay. I'm not sure what this is in reference to, but okay. Thank you, Mr. Ronald Davis. I appreciate that. We got Crafty Karen saying they're gonna use it to run electricity power, like always said. Then Wild Dog Media says Iran insists they are not Iraq with three different tribes controlled by the miner. Don't mess with the crew. And then Crafty Karen says, then go at war against them for doing it after because they've seen they'll be attacked. So had no other choice. Okay. Hey Abby, welcome to the check-in. Hope you're doing well up there in Canada. Doing pretty good. Yes. Okay. So just to kind of recap for everybody, we started off discussing the KC-135 incident. There are 6 folks confirmed dead from this incident here. We got to see what the family of one of the victims had to say, how they're coping with everything. Then we kind of moved over to talking about Kharg Island, as well as the 5,000 troops being deployed over into that area. And we talked a little bit about, the increase of gas prices, of that nature. And we just listened to what the Prime Minister of Iran had to say about everything thus far. Okay. So next we are going to move over and we're going to listen to how Trump is now saying that this needs to be a concerted effort, a group effort, if you will, not just the United States and Israel. So that's quite interesting because I think he told someone over in the UK, he made a comment to the effect of that they're offering support after the Americans have already won the war. And then he's now talking about needing support from other interests, from other parties of interest in that Strait of Hormuz, right? So that Strait of Hormuz is going to have a major impact on the global economy if they don't get this straight. I don't know if they really thought about how Iran was going to hold that hostage, if you will, but they are doing what they're doing, and they showed force, and they bombed 3 of the tankers out there on this past end of the week. I want to say on like Thursday, Friday. Yeah. So let's go ahead and get into this.
President Trump is calling on other countries to help secure safe passage of ships through the Strait of Hormuz. Trump specifically called on China, France, the UK, and others to help. Shipping traffic has been at a virtual standstill in the strait, caused gas prices to spike. In a new interview with MS Now, Iran's foreign minister disputed the claim that the strait is closed. CNN correspondent Julia Benbrook has more.
Let me stop real quick. So you just heard him say that Trump is calling on China as one of the fellow countries to kind of help step in with this whole thing about the Strait of Hormuz. But as I mentioned, China is still getting their oil from Iran. So yeah, that's kind of interesting. And we just saw the interview with the prime minister. So this is probably either the same one or a clip from a different interview that he did. Let's get into it.
This is a big area of focus right now, as roughly 20% of the world's oil travels through the Strait of Hormuz. And President Donald Trump has posted about this several times over the weekend. I want to pull up part of one of those posts for you now. In it, he said this: many countries, especially those who are affected by Iran's attempted closure of the Hormuz Strait, will be sending warships in conjunction with the United States of America to keep the strait open and safe. We have already destroyed 100% of Iran's military capability, but it's easy for them to send a drone or two, drop a mine, or deliver a close-range missile somewhere along or in this waterway, no matter how badly defeated they are. He added that he hopes, emphasis on hopes there, that China, France, South Korea, and the United Kingdom will be sending ships. In the meantime, he says that the United States will be bombing the shoreline. Now, in a separate post, he reiterated his calls for other countries to help secure shipping in the passage, adding that he believes this should have been a team effort all along, and now it will be. He said the United States will be helping with coordination to ensure that this is done quickly, smoothly, and well. And this comes as Americans are feeling a direct impact here, as there is a surge in gas prices. And while Trump has said he is confident those will eventually go down, this could be an attempt to ease some of those growing concerns. Iran's foreign minister has denied claims that the strait is completely closed, instead saying that they are blocking vessels with ties to the United States and Israel.
A week ago, President Trump told Keir Starmer that he didn't need help from the British, especially coming in after the U.S., in his words, had already won. Fast forward to this weekend, where he's asking for help from China, France, Japan, South Korea, the UK, others as well, to continue passage through the Strait of Hormuz. Frame the reality that is confronting the president at this stage of the war.
Sure. I think his initial comments were related to the four objectives that were laid out in terms of what the Pentagon was trying to achieve from a military perspective, because there was a question about whether or not we would need to use the British base at Diego Garcia in the Indian Ocean to be able to launch strategic bombers against Iran. And I think the Pentagon determined, obviously, now that it could do so without having to use that base. Now we're talking about a different mission set. So in addition to those four objectives that were laid out in terms of taking out the missiles, the missile launchers, the drones, the defense industrial base behind that, the Navy, and then potentially the nuclear program, which Cedric just spoke to in terms of what they're targeting, a new mission set has popped up, and that is the defense of the Straits of Hormuz to allow folks to be able to transit there commercial shipping-wise, because the Iranians have now adopted a strategy of trying to apply pressure on the U.S. administration to stop the war by jacking up the price of oil, basically, by making the straits virtually impossible to transit. They're physically open, but due to the threat of a potential attack, ships are not transiting at the moment. And so the U.S. is trying to build an international naval coalition, similar to what they did off the coast of Yemen when the Houthis were attacking during the last round of conflict.
Colonel, I want you to listen here to the Iranian Foreign Minister, Abbas Araghchi. He was on last evening. Let's watch.
I can say that the strait is not closed, but it is only closed to American, Israeli, ships and tankers, and not to others.
So he says it's open. Are countries, companies likely to test that assurance? I mean, consider President Pezeshkian said that the Iranians were sorry for attacking their Gulf neighbors and then continued hours later to attack them and still are. You think anybody's going to test that offer?
I don't think so, Victor. And I think, as Alex was alluding to, the basic thing is this: because the Iranians can't be trusted, shipping companies are not going to trust them. And that's the real dilemma for them here. They've got a whole bunch of ships on either side of the Strait of Hormuz, and those ships aren't moving except for very few exceptions because the Iranians are posing a threat. They probably, so far at least, have not really mined the Strait of Hormuz. Maybe in a symbolic sense, they've they've deployed a few mines, but they have not done so en masse. And that definitely leads to the conclusion that, yes, it's physically possible possible to possibly transit the strait, but it's very dangerous, and there's a risk there that they're not willing to take.
Alex, what's your thought on what the president told NBC, that he's not ready to make a deal to end the war? The president says that Iran wants to make a deal, but he doesn't want to, quote, because the terms aren't good enough yet. Doesn't say what those terms are, but implied here is that there are terms offered, that there are talks, that there are some offers from the Iranians. Doesn't seem like there's been anything since the talks before the opening of this war. What do you hear there from the president?
Well, I'm hearing from the president, what I'm hearing from mediators in the region as well, where there's been several nation states that have attempted to mediate or pass messages in between. And so that part, as you just alluded to, yes, I mean, that's pretty common at this point in the war. And this actually all aligns with strategies on both sides, to be honest with you. So, it looks like there's several weeks of strikes left to complete the military mission on the U.S. side, and it becomes a question of is the will there to see the mission through and ensure that there's not a capability left inside of Iran that could strike back. And I think the president's made clear that the objectives that he's laid out are to make sure that Iran doesn't have a nuclear weapon or the ability to get one at the end of this, to break out, so to speak, missiles and drones and that type of thing, which is a pretty robust mission. It's a very, very big industrial base that has to be targeted in order to sort of take that out. And for the Iranians, they're acting from a position of existential threat. They believe that the regime is at threat, and so they're doing everything they can to try to ensure that this doesn't end in an unconditional surrender. They want a conditional ceasefire on their terms. So I think at this point, you almost have to see the Straits mission through and open that up and not allow the Iranians to choke it off, or that's going to become a strategic choke point and means of deterrence in the future. And that'll hold the global economy basically at risk whenever the Iranians want to. And that's something that simply can't stand.
How do you see this playing out from where we sit today?
The president doesn't yet know how to get the Straits reopened. As of right now, almost all of the naval assets that the United States has in the Persian Gulf are being used to defend Gulf infrastructure, energy, desalination, and bases. And as a consequence, you can't defend the ships that are going through the Straits or that are sitting there in the Straits, which are right now basically sitting ducks if the Iranians choose to hit them. That's why President Trump is suddenly calling pretty urgently for every country around, including China. He's asking for other countries to send ships. And this, remember, the United States, when they launched this war, went with the Israelis. They weren't asking anyone else to be a part of it. They weren't getting anyone else a heads up. They were telling the Brits, we already won. That was just last Saturday. It's too late for you to send any ships. 1 week later, he's saying we need a global flotilla. And that is because the impact of these straits staying disrupted, with the only country that can get ships out right now, the Iranians, that is a major, major disruption that we're going to feel for months in the United States and the global economy.
And so two follow-ups to that. What is the likelihood of this actually happening, what the president is requesting, these other countries coming together to help? And are you surprised by Iran's actions, that they were willing to do it and shut down the strait?
I think that other countries are going to participate. We've certainly heard from the French. I suspect the Brits will participate. I think other countries will as well, maybe even India. How much of that will be defensive? Overwhelmingly, it's not like they're joining the United States in a coalition of the willing to beat up on Iran, but everybody wants the straits reopen. Now, and India has managed to get one of their own tankers through in the last 24 hours on the back of an agreement between Modi and the Iranian president. Maybe we can get more support that way too. But no, I mean, the surprise here is that the United States did not have a plan for what happens if they don't have a regime they can work with, and they don't. I mean, everybody knew that the Straits of Hormuz could be made impassable by the Iranians. I mean, this is something that the CIA analysts and the Department of Defense analysts have been working through for decades. It's been scenario planned every which way. So that doesn't come as a surprise. But Trump wasn't worried about it because he said, well, after we decapitate the Iranians, they're not going to do anything. They're going to need to work with us. That turns out to not be the case at all. And so 2 weeks into this war, a war of choice, Trump's timeline, Trump's preferences, Trump's extent of targeting, you still got the straits closed with no way out. And it is urgent for Trump, who is now facing $4 gas real soon in the United States. And, fertilizer, you don't get fertilizer through. It's too late if it's after the planting season. That's going to come through food costs all over the world, grocery stores in the United States. Too late if you don't get that done urgently. So he does understand the urgency. He just doesn't have a plan for it.
And so to the point about who is in charge.
Hold on. That man said a lot right there. That man right there, I can't read, I can't see who he is, but he made some good points. Yeah, I don't think they have a plan. I don't think they were intending on Iran responding the way that they have. Okay. I don't think they were planning on that. Okay. And, they have the straits, at a standstill, if you will. It's like, I don't know. I think that he may be onto something. Let's see. We have Abby saying this just goes to show you that Trump is not for the American people. Yep, that's what they're saying.
In Iran and how that is all working. I do want to ask you about Iran's new supreme leader. Ostensibly, we heard a purported statement from him in this last week, the first statement since he was named. But we have not seen him in public. We have not heard from him directly. What does that mean to you?
Well, we know a couple of things. He certainly doesn't have experience running the country, and they also are mostly cut off from their local commanders, because the idea of military leadership having regular conversations with the commanders on the ground means that they are potentially more vulnerable to the Israelis and the Americans striking them. So right now, the decisions being made to put all of these drones in the air against all of these targets around the Gulf, those are being made locally. At the same time, it was the Iranian president, who is a symbolic leader and hasn't had a lot of power, but he's the one that talked with Modi, the Indian prime minister, to essentially get a swaps deal done that got a tanker through. So it's very hard to know what, if any, authority the supreme leader has on a day-to-day basis right now. I mean, the analysts that we have that are very close to politics in Iran have no visibility on that whatsoever.
Yeah, and so it leaves that open question that you're getting at right there. What about Iran's allies in this war? China, by far the biggest buyer of Iranian oil, and U.S. intelligence suggests they're preparing to financially aid Iran as well. What about the China in all of this?
Well, the Chinese, of course, would much rather see the straits open. They have right now plenty of oil in reserves, probably for 3 months of domestic usage. So it's not urgent for them. But these prices are hurting their economy, clearly, and that will also be true for fertilizer. It's going to be true for, petrochemicals and the rest. So they want this open. That the tankers that are getting out right now are Iranian tankers. Pete Hegseth said this in his press conference yesterday morning. He said that the straits are not blocked. That is true. There are Iranian tankers getting out, and they are getting out to provide oil to China. The United States has every capacity to interdict them if they wish. They don't. They want the prices lower, just like why the U.S. is right now suspending sanctions on Russian oil. And they also don't want to antagonize the Chinese. Remember, just 6 hours ago, Trump called on the Chinese to help keep the strait open. So, and he's going to travel to China in a couple of weeks, and he's going to meet with Xi Jinping, and he wants good relations there. So he doesn't want to suddenly be responsible for shutting down oil to China. But it is all very ironic in an environment where the Americans are at war with Iran, that the Iranians are presently sending oil to China. And the Chinese, of course, are quite comfortable with that.
Yeah, interesting stuff. Ian Brimmer.
Yeah, I mean, so I don't think that China's going to be sending anything by way of helping Trump in the near term, because if they're getting what they need, I mean, they're not impacted. So that's what I'm understanding. Mr. Lou wanted me to put in the chat, do a poll about a flotilla or an armada. I hope y'all know what that is, because I don't. So we have, okay, Mr. Leroy, welcome to the check-in. You're saying this is a Democrat war. If you don't mind, can you help me understand why you think that? very interested in hearing. Then we have Mike Fash live saying the people who are affected are the people around Iran. USA is pretty much safe as Iran doesn't have missiles that can reach the USA. So they say. So they say, Mr. Mike Fash live. So they say. I don't know. So we have Lou saying at Leroy. Okay, at Leroy says Democrat war. Executive branch says it's not a war, it's an operation. Congress is majority Republican and approval authority of war powers, but no vote has taken place. What is going on here? You're right, they haven't done the war power thing. I mean, every time I look on the internet, like everybody seems to be against having this war. There was only one gentleman that I saw that was in support of it. That was a Democrat. I cannot think of his name. But he's always kind of on. I think it's Fetterman is his last name. Let me look that up real quick, y'all. I got my tablet here. I think his name was Fetterman. Let me look this up. Okay, let me see. Fetterman and Epic Fury. I think he was saying that it was necessary. Let me check. Hold on. Give me 1 second, y'all. Yeah, Senator John Fetterman. That's his name. He said it was absolutely necessary to produce peace and prevent Iran from developing nuclear weapons. So that's the only Democrat that I have heard that thought that it was a necessity from a congressman standpoint. We looked at a couple videos last Thursday, and they weren't very pleased. It was Senator Elizabeth Warren and the other person. What was his name? Do I have his name written down? Give me a second, y'all. Because it was Senator Elizabeth Warren, and it was another gentleman that did not agree. But I don't have it written down. Yeah, I don't have it written down. But yeah, so Elizabeth Warren and yeah, I don't have the guy's name down. So anyway, y'all. So yeah, interesting. So, what do we have next, y'all? So, I don't know if you guys were aware, but I found out today that the U.S. Embassy in Iraq has been hit. And honestly, I cannot say that I'm surprised to hear that. I'm surprised it didn't get hit before now, considering that they're having this war, um, in that region with that entity. So, let's check that out.
We've entered the third week of Operation Epic Fury, and strikes continue across the Middle East tonight. The U.S. Embassy in Baghdad warning all Americans to leave Iraq now. And you can see plumes of smoke, buildings shaking in Iraq's financial center as a missile struck the U.S. Embassy compound in the country's capital. As we speak, USS Tripoli, thousands more of U.S. Marines on their way to the Middle East. And right now, Secretary of War Pete Hegseth saying Iran's strike force is being depleted. One-way drones are down 95%, ballistic missiles down 90%. President Trump saying Iran is being obliterated and they are ready to make a deal, but not one he is willing to accept. Meanwhile, Iran is warning people to evacuate 3 major ports in the United Arab Emirates after saying it will target them. The move, retaliation for a U.S. strike on Kharg Island, a critical Iranian oil export hub. For context, 90% of Iran's oil exports flow through this island. And speaking of oil, the U.S. Treasury Secretary saying it's possible the U.S. Navy will be escorting commercial ships through the Strait of Hormuz as the global oil market is choked off from the Middle East supply. President Trump reassuring Americans that gas prices will fall once this conflict with Iran is over.
I think the gas prices, as soon as that's over, are going to come tumbling down along with everything else. I think it's going to be, you're going to see a very big decrease in the price of gasoline, gas, anything having to do with energy, as soon as this is ended.
News Nation's Robert Sherman on the ground in the Middle East tonight, getting a pulse of where things stand in this war. Robert.
Tonight, Iran is raising the stakes, threatening to hit American interests anywhere in the Middle East after American forces carried out a massive strike on Kharg Island overnight. the oil lifeline for Iran, which makes up about 90% of its oil exports. The president saying only military targets were hit, missile stockpiles, mine storage units, but the oil infrastructure was spared. But that could change, according to the president, if attacks on ships in the Strait of Hormuz continue and the critical waterway remains closed. Iran, however, showing no signs of capitulation, hitting an oil site in the UAE with a drone today, causing black smoke to fill the skies above, calling on all civilians to evacuate 3 ports there in the UAE after accusing them of allowing the Americans to launch the strike on Kharg Island from their soil, a claim the Emiratis deny. But it's not just energy infrastructure coming under fire, but diplomatic missions as well, with the U.S. Embassy complex in Baghdad being hit by a missile overnight. The State Department telling Americans there to leave Iraq now, with Iran's retaliations expected to continue. And as the tension rises, more U.S. troops are reportedly set to deploy to the region, possibly more than 2,000 of them. And among them, a Marine Expeditionary Unit, which would give the U.S. new capabilities, including boots-on-the-ground raids in Iran. The Pentagon not saying that will happen, but also not taking options off the table. For the time being, Iranian officials say they maintain the right to defend themselves and hit anyone who aids the Americans and Israelis. According to one Iranian member of parliament, that list should include Ukraine for helping Israel bolster its drone capabilities. For that reason alone, he says Ukraine should be viewed as a legitimate target.
Okay. So you heard what they just said about who they're going to consider as targets, right? If they have any United States interests on that property, they are good to be gone, honey. So that's crazy. So we have Lou here talking about a flotilla is a fleet of small watercraft or small specialized naval unit consisting of 2 or more squadrons of small warships. Armada is a large fleet of warships organized as a tactical unit. Okay. So we got Ron Ligon saying, don't forget drug wars idea. We took Venezuela oil and fentanyl chain supply. I ain't know about the fentanyl chain supply. I didn't know about that. Wild Dog Media is saying U.S. oil tanker already destroyed. No turning back. A charging bear. Oh, when did they take down the U.S. oil tanker? I don't think I heard about that one. Okay, let me look that up. Okay, U.S. oil tanker down. I don't need that going out. Okay, thank you. But yeah, so they went ahead on and told people, hey, you need to get out of here because we're talking these airports now. They at least giving people, the opportunity to get out the way, since they say they are, only I guess interested in non in military type things, right? So next up, we have some skeptics of Trump regarding his underestimation of Iraq. So let's see what they had to say.
So not prepared for something that administrations have been talking about for decades?
Yeah, look, this is reporting from CNN's Zach Cohen, Phil Mattingly, Kevin Liptak, and Kylie Atwood, and it gets into just how problematic what is happening in the Strait of Hormuz, which of course is one of the world's most important energy chokeholds in the country. It's responsible for 20% of the global crude oil that comes out of that very key waterway. And what they're learning, our colleagues, is that essentially that while key officials from the Department of Energy and the Department of Treasury were present for a lot of these briefings, what is typical in planning for something of this magnitude, an operation, military operation of this magnitude in the Middle East, they said that the agency analysis and forecast that would be integral elements of the decision-making process in past administrations were secondary considerations here. Now, I think one of the key things is what the administration is actually going to do about this, John. And what we've heard from top officials and what our colleagues are hearing from their sources involved in some of the planning on this is that it could be weeks before the Trump administration's efforts to really try and alleviate the impact of what is happening in the Strait can actually take effect. We have heard many officials kind of talk about the possibility of having the U.S. Navy go in and escort some of these oil tankers and ships through the Strait to make sure they're safer. But that is very high risk. And that is something that we've now heard as well from top officials like the Energy Secretary Chris Wright, noting that it can be very dangerous to do that. Meanwhile, we've heard from the president kind of trying to downplay some of the tumult we've seen with energy and what has been happening in the Strait. Now, I do want to reference what we heard from the Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent yesterday. He was speaking with Sky News, and he said that the escorts from the U.S. Navy will begin, quote, as soon as it is militarily possible. He said that was their planning, and there's a chance that the U.S. Navy or perhaps an international coalition could ultimately escort these tankers through. We also heard, just speaking on this idea of preparedness and the lack thereof that our colleagues are reporting on, we did hear from the White House, a spokeswoman, Anna Kelly. This is what she told CNN. She said, through a detailed planning process, the entire administration is and was prepared for any potential action taken by the terrorist Iranian regime. She went on to say that the president has been clear that any disruptions to energy are temporary and will result in a benefit to our country. That has really been the line we've heard from this White House, that what is happening right now with oil is temporary. But all to say, we do know that energy executives as well are kind of trying to play it safe right now. They do not want to be sending their oil tankers through, risking lives, risking their ships at this moment. So this is a problem that is likely going to continue for a long time until the administration can figure out how to safely, escort these ships and reopen the Strait in a way that is safe for everyone. John?
Secretary of Energy Chris Wright told Kate yesterday they were not yet ready to escort these fuel tankers through the Strait. General, the reporting is that somehow the administration, the National Security Council, the Pentagon maybe underestimated what Iran was willing to do in the Strait. How could that be when I know that a Strait closure has been near doctrine in the U.S. for decades?
That doctrine.
John, I was very surprised by those, that reporting as well. In my experience, and I've spent, a couple of decades working in the Central Command area of responsibility, to include being part of, the development and the review of the concepts of operations to address the threats that Iran poses to the region and specifically the Strait. So I believe that CENTCOM certainly had this as a potential response option based on, offensive operations into Iran. So now the fact that potentially all the capability to start clearing the Strait to allow freedom of navigation, and we may have to have additional capabilities build up to include, similar to what we had with Prosperity Guardian, to rely on our coalition partners in the Gulf states and our allies from NATO to assist. That may be forthcoming.
Let's listen to what the secretary just said about the Strait of Hormuz.
They are exercising sheer desperation in the Straits of Hormuz. Something we're dealing with. We have been dealing with it and don't need to worry about it. We're on plan to defeat, destroy, disable all of their meaningful military capabilities at a pace the world has never seen before. The only thing prohibiting transit in the Straits right now is Iran shooting at shipping. It is open for transit should Iran not do that. Now, there's a reason why we chose as one of our primary objectives destroy the Navy. We understood the ability to interdict shipping is something Iran has done for 40 years. It's key terrain. They've used it as leverage. The world is seeing what they'll do to fight back in that context. And so we've heard them talk about taking various measures, and we're planning for all of them. So we have a plan for every option here. We're working with our interagency partners, and that's not a strait we're going to allow to remain contested or with a lack of flow of commercial goods. So we're aware of that. We're laser focused on our military objectives, but also want to make sure our partners across this government understand we're working with you to make sure that energy flows. And that's an important part.
Let's talk about the Strait of Hormuz. It's really become the center of this war right now, and maybe more than anything else, this seems to be bringing the battle home for the American people. Do you agree?
Well, absolutely. And a lot of people may be puzzled by it. They say, look, there's a conflict way over there. The United States does produce a lot of oil and gas. So why is the cost going up at my corner gas station? First of all, because that is also a big oil and gas region. A lot of petroleum products there, from the UAE to Saudi Arabia, a huge producer, Kuwait, Iraq, and Iran itself. And almost all of it has to come through this thin ribbon of water down here and pass through the very tight Strait of Hormuz. About 3,000 ships a month, about 20 million barrels of oil a day. And Iran, as you noted above, Jake, is really putting a lot of military pressure on those ships and, in effect, slamming the gates shut there at the Strait and letting almost nothing through.
We've heard about the effort to mine the Strait, sea mines by the Iranians. What do we know about Iran's ability, their capability to do that?
We know that they have a lot of mines, and they're not the old mines that you see in World War II movies. For example, they have this type of mine, which is called an influence mine. This is just one type. This sort of mine is much more modern. It sits underwater, and it basically takes readings on what's passing above, so that if a small boat or ship goes by, it may ignore it. But if a big tanker goes by, and that's what it's been tuned to, that's when it may detonate. It will be enough to destroy it? We don't know. How many are out there? We don't know. But that uncertainty alone is also contributing to the notion that none of these ships that ought to be going out are doing so. Jake?
Tom, most of the oil from the Strait goes to Asia, notably to China. So why is it impacting the U.S. this way?
Yeah, almost none of it comes to the United States. But the problem is oil is traded on a world market. Once it gets out there, it's basically being all mixed together and traded. So if I were to put barrels in the back of our warehouse here and make them represent all the oil being traded in the world, 20% of it is now not passing through the Strait of Hormuz. You simply cannot remove that much from the market without affecting shipping and trade and manufacturing. And yeah, absolutely, what all of you are likely to pay this weekend when you go to gas up your car.
Y'all, that's a lot. I mean, I knew what a mine was, but I liked how he broke that down. I mean, I definitely would not want to take the risk of going through that strait and they have these mines. So they're saying that the Iranian boats are going through, but I mean, are their boats not the same um weight, if you will, as what other countries' boats are? Like, how would the mine not know well, hey, these are all large tankers, but this one is for Iran and this one is for someone else if they're just out here. So I don't know if these mines are like connected to something else that helps them decide when to detonate. This is out my realm, y'all, but that is crazy to me. So I would definitely be sitting myself right there somewhere. I just hate that these people are out here. I remember one of the three that got bombed the other day. I had a video of the people that had to leave the boat via the lifeboat, and it was just so sad. Like, I just don't know. I don't know, y'all. It's crazy. What are y'all saying here? We have Tammy Pierce saying, "Welcome to the check-in, Miss Tammy. Why did President Carter give the Strait away?" I didn't know that. He gave the Strait away? I didn't know that, Miss Tammy. They said Tammy Pierce says 20% comes to the US. Paul says that's BS. Tammy Pierce says President Carter is responsible for all of this. Then we have Ron Lignan talking about their gilded torpedoes. So you're saying, okay, Ron is saying that the mines are gilded torpedoes. Interesting. Interesting. Okay. Then we have Wild Dog Media saying, thank you for the update. That's a high casualty rate for us. We'll be mitigating that with higher level forces and weaponry. Okay, yeah. Then we got Kyle Gibson saying, I see no military discipline from the USA. Okay. We have Kyle Gibson saying the Prince of Persia is strong. Okay. Then we have Cal saying, how can Carter be the problem? The USA does not own that to give it away. Okay. So next up, we have another video from a foreign policy expert. Let's see what he or she has to say.
Maloney joins me now. She is the Vice President and Director of the Foreign Policy Program of the Brookings Institution. Her research focuses on Iran and the Persian Gulf. Suzanne, give me your sense of things right now. And I know you've given an appraisal generally of what the prospects of success in Iran are. Tell my audience what that is.
Let's say, the initial hours of the conflict produced some really impressive victories for the United States and Israel, particularly the assassination of Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, Iran's supreme leader for the past 37 years. And we've seen over the course of the past 10 days that the United States and Israel have been able to take out a lot of Iran's offensive and defensive military capabilities, the ballistic missile program, the Navy, the Air Force. That's all pretty impressive. But overall, it's really unclear what the objectives are for this campaign. The president's story has changed on a number of occasions, and we've heard different things from different senior officials in the administration. And I think what's quite clear at this point is that regime change is not likely, that Iran is going to continue to strike back and try to hurt the economic and energy infrastructure of its neighbors and try to drive up oil prices in a way that will have a political impact on the president's party at the upcoming midterm elections. All of that, on balance, suggests to me a conflict that's not going the way the White House had hoped.
And Suzanne, when you talk about Iran trying to do the things you just outlined, economically and otherwise, even wounded, it can still do some of those things from your vantage point.
Absolutely. I mean, what we've seen is the drone technology, which, as you were just discussing, is widely available, and Iran has been really a leader in that, providing Shahid drones first to Russia and now using them against their neighbors. Just those drones alone can cause disruption to air travel and can threaten the kind of economic and social and political model that the Iran's neighbors in the Gulf have been banking on. And that has been a way to shift their economies away from reliance on oil and attract investment and tourism and finance and technology companies. And when a drone goes through a hotel window, it may not have a long-term impact on the structure of the building, but it has a long-term impact on the willingness of companies to invest and tourists to come visit.
Right.
Suzanne, do me a favor. When people think of regime, they sometimes think of one person or a small group around one person. But in Iran, it is much larger than that. Can you walk my audience through that just a little bit?
Sure. This is a regime that's been in power for 47 years, and they came to power through a popular revolution, people coming to the streets, ousting the prior monarchy. And what they've done over those 47 years is try to insulate the system from a similar thing happening to them. And so we have a multiplicity of governing organizations. We have very tight control from the office of the supreme leader, which now has passed from Ayatollah Khamenei to his son, Mojtaba. And there is a network of officials that is controlled by the supreme leader in every element of the Iranian bureaucracy. And they've also made it impossible for people to organize outside of a government body in any way that could challenge or confront the regime. And so there's an enormous level of redundancy. We saw this in the June war when a number of security officials were eliminated early on. Iran very quickly replaced them. We're seeing similar things happen over the course of this conflict as well.
Suzanne Maloney, really important stuff. I appreciate your time.
All right, so we got her perspective. They say that his son Mashtaba may have been severely hurt and maybe disfigured. So he did have a message that he put out maybe a couple of days ago, but someone else read it for him. So they're wondering about that. There's someone mentioned in the chat here about Netanyahu. He's with Israel. They were saying that he may not be here with us either. He may be unalive, but I haven't seen anything confirmed for that. So lots of activities happening with people and all these different attacks that are happening. So for those who are just joining, I'm glad that you're here. Please like the live stream to keep me in the algorithm. And if you are so inclined, please support the channel by subscribing. Thus far, we have talked about the KC-135 that went down last week. They have confirmed that all 6 passengers were unalived and are here with us. We talked about Kharg Island being bombed, as well as the 5,000 deployed sailors and Marines that are heading out toward the Middle East. We talked about the gas prices that are going up. We saw the Prime Minister of Iran's perspective, and we just got through talking about like the U.S. Embassy being hit, as well as Trump requesting support from some of his allies. Okay, so now we're going to transition a little bit over here, and we're going to get some perspective from a Qatari official and how he thinks things is going. So let's get into that.
We're now in the third week of the U.S. and Israel's war with Iran. Tehran has responded by striking targets across the Gulf, including critical oil and gas facilities, and by forcing the closure of the Strait of Hormuz, where 1/5 of the world's oil exports pass through. The result is a shock to the global energy markets and a region on the edge. One country caught squarely in the crossfire is Qatar, home to the largest U.S. military base in the Middle East, and one of the few Gulf states that also maintains diplomatic ties with Iran. Imtiaz Tayyab reports from the capital, Doha.
For decades, this is the image Qatar wanted the world to see. A modern, glittering nation among the richest in the Gulf, fueled by trillions of dollars in natural gas. That attracted expats from around the world looking for safe and lucrative lives abroad. But that shining image has been all but shattered after Iranian drones and missiles broke through its air defenses in response to the U.S. and Israel's war on Iran, forcing the capital Doha's main airport, one of the busiest in the world, to a near standstill and grinding its economy to a halt. We met Qatar's foreign ministry spokesman and advisor to the Prime Minister, Majid al-Ansari, at his office in Doha.
Give us a sense of what is happening in this moment.
And what we have right now is, for all intents and purposes, a regional war.
Leaders across the Gulf had long warned Washington any war with Iran had the potential to destabilize the region.
How long can Qatar sustain this for?
We need an end to this as soon as possible. The effect is not only, when it comes to hard security, the effects of a prolonged conflict in this region will have a profound impact on industry, on energy.
Qatar is the world's largest producer of liquefied natural gas, LNG, that powers energy grids around the world and earns it huge profits. The massive Ras Laffan plant was forced completely offline after it was targeted in an Iranian attack. Making matters worse, much of Iran's energy is exported through the Strait of Hormuz, a nearby narrow choke point where 1/5 of the world's oil transits. Nearly 500 tankers have dropped anchor there rather than risk being hit, causing energy prices to swing and global markets to tumble. And yet, the U.S. and Israel have only intensified strikes across Iran, with President Trump sending mixed signals on how long the war will last.
From Qatar's point of view, was it a mistake for President Trump and Israel to start this war?
It wouldn't be prudent, Omi, right now to assess or classify this war in any way. The important thing right now is to find a way out of this that protects the people of the region and provides hope in prosperity and security for all peoples.
Qatar is also home to Al Udeid, the largest U.S. military base in the region. Doha's calculus was, by cultivating deep ties with Washington, it would mean greater protections. Since the start of the U.S. and Israeli war on Iran, all Gulf states have quietly complained the U.S. hasn't done enough to protect their airspaces, people, and economies. In his first message as Supreme Leader, Mujtaba Khamenei warned the Strait of Hormuz would continue to be a pressure point and made it clear that neighboring countries who allow their territory to be used to attack Iran, those bases would continue to be targeted.
Iran has a new Supreme Leader. What is Qatar's message to him?
Our message to all the Iranian leadership: you have chosen to drag the region into this war in the hopes of finding an end to it. You are doing the complete opposite of that.
And until that changes, diplomacy to end the war may remain out of reach. For CBS Saturday Morning, I'm Imtiaz Tayyab in Doha, Qatar.
He said that they have dragged the entire region into the war with the intent of trying to figure out how to get out of the war. That gentleman right there was very he was very measured with his words. Like, he didn't want to say anything to be accusatory, but he did say that basically we need to get out of this, figuring that out, because Qatar is beautiful. Okay, and I know they don't want, all of that luxury, if you will, to be, to be damaged. You know what I'm saying? I would love to go over there and visit, but I'm not going over there right now. No, 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 no. What are you guys saying here in the chat? We have Moflo saying, thank you for answering my questions. You're welcome. You're welcome, and thank you for being here. I appreciate you. Yes, Ron Ligon says, likes everyone. Yes, please like the live stream. I appreciate that. And subscribe if you are so inclined. That would be very helpful. It's free. We have EL6092. Welcome to the live stream. Saying, if the U.S. cannot protect their own bases in West Asia, how are they going to protect ships? Okay. Then we have Diane Ross, 5316. Welcome to the live stream. Says Trump effing everything up. Again, he doesn't care about the soldiers. Then we have Wild Dog Media saying U.S. has special ops in the Coast Guard at Lou. When I hear flotilla, I see things like the USS Zumwalt being sent in from Mississippi. Okay. And then we have Lou saying President Carter, what? Shout out to my home state on Georgia 100. Then we have Wild Dog Media saying Iran turns its back on diplomacy. And then we have Lou talking about President Carter used to be a Georgia peanut farmer. Okay, so we have an okay, so Lou is saying, Sim Fashionista, another poll question. This time, what happens if more than 20% of the world's oil supply is impacted? What happens at 30, 40, 50%? Okay, well, I'm gonna need a little help with that poll question. I gotta have the little answers to give them the little answer choices. Let me know what that is too. We have Abby saying that war is never the answer. And then we also have KN, so I'm sorry, XNBDX Title Titan saying hello. Welcome to the check-in. We have Nivakale, ooh Lord. We have NIVEKL Ray saying V. Okay, we have Wild Dog Media saying you complain about too much U.S. presence, then now is the time to openly ask for help. All right. Then Lou says laugh out loud, last week's price is not this week's price. Definitely when it comes to gas. I agree. Wild Dog says we love the polls in my house. Well, I'm glad that you do. Yes, thank you. I'm gonna keep them coming. But for that last poll, Mr. Lou, I'm gonna need the little things for the answer choices. Because it just says yes or no. What happens if more this time, what happens if more than 20% of the world's oil supply is impacted? What happens? Okay, well, can you guys, y'all hear the question right? Can y'all put y'all thoughts in the chat? Because I don't know how to, I don't have any options for that one. Okay, y'all. So what we got next? So next up, we have also the perspective from the UK, from a UK leader's perspective. So let's get into that. He was quite interesting.
Since returning to office, Donald Trump has repeatedly alienated some of the United States' staunchest allies, whether through his tariff policies or even calls to take over countries like Greenland. Now, as the U.S. enters the third week of its war against Iran, nations around the world are also facing the military and, most importantly, a little bit, economic impacts, leading to questionable support of the U.S.'s actions at a time when it may need it the most. In the UK, the leader of the Liberal Democrats, the country's third biggest party in parliament, is calling on their prime minister to urge King Charles to cancel his upcoming state visit to the U.S. next month as a result of the ongoing war. Ed Davey posted online, quote, given Trump's illegal war that is devastating the Middle East and pushing up energy bills, Prime Minister Keir Starmer should advise the king to call off April's state visit to the U.S. A state visit should not be given to someone who repeatedly insults and damages our country. Joining us now is Sir Ed Davey, leader of the Liberal Democrats Party in the UK. Sir, thank you very much for joining us this morning. When we are in kind of a deluge of news here, and as reporters and journalists, we're constantly digging through it, and we have our own views of how this country may be viewed. When you talk to your colleagues, when you talk to people that you represent, the people of the UK, when they look at a Justice Department that is gutted, they look at, a president who is governing by id, who will decide that the Iran war is over when he feels it in his bones. How do people in the UK view this country at this moment?
Well, let's be clear. Many of us love America. and we're full of admiration for what many of you are doing in Minnesota, across the country, standing up to Trump. And, we're full of admiration for what you're doing. Beating Trump is vital for America. It's also vital for the rest of the world. So we're on your side when you're standing up to Trump, because I have to say, I think people across the UK are pretty unhappy. We tend to be really pro-America. Certainly Liberal Democrats are. But when you have a guy in the White House who's like this, I mean, it's unspeakable. We no longer consider Trump to be a reliable ally for our country.
Well, and to that point, Ed, I'm going to put up some headlines of how President Trump has been talking about your Prime Minister Keir Starmer, where the president said, "I'm very disappointed in Starmer over Iran," or says that Starmer is no Winston Churchill, or rebuking Starmer for not letting the U.S. attack Iran from UK bases, or Trump accusing Starmer of seeking to, quote, join wars after we've already won. And we like to talk about, on both sides of the pond, about the special relationship between our two nations. And I appreciate your kind words, the people to people, British to Americans, citizens wise. But when it comes to the nations, has that special relationship been harmed by the constant attacks by the President of the United States on the British Prime Minister?
Undoubtedly, Donald Trump is not helping that relationship that we value so much. And, I think he should look in the mirror. I mean, I'm not going to here to defend our Prime Minister. He's a leader of a different political party. But one thing I will say for our politicians, they wear shoes that fit.
That is the most incredible dig at Secretary of State Marco Rubio, and the picture of him in those shoes that do not fit. I was the only one who noticed that.
You were not.
Sir Ed, you are fire this morning.
Sir Ed, I'm wondering, the Prime Minister has deployed limited military resources to the conflict, seemingly because you've all inadvertently been dragged into this. But is there anything that the Parliament and that you all can do to ensure that no more military resources than you've already deployed are further deployed?
Yeah, we're certainly in my party arguing we shouldn't get involved in this. Frankly, the Prime Minister, in my view, hasn't stood up to Donald Trump anywhere near enough. I've been arguing that while we have Trump in the White House, we need to look for strengthening our alliances with our European colleagues, with our Commonwealth colleagues like Canada. What I'm looking at for our Prime Minister is to make sure not only does he keep out of the war, but he's not dragged into it by pressure from the White House. So, there's many of us in the UK Parliament who are asking some tough questions to make sure our country doesn't follow Donald Trump. And, let's face it, this illegal war of Donald Trump is devastating for countries across the Middle East who are our allies, but it's devastating for people, isn't it? We're seeing the price at the pump for our petrol and diesel go up. We're seeing oil price go up. It's going to damage our economy. I mean, I don't know what you guys think about it in America, what he's doing to your economy. He's really letting people down in America, and he's letting British people down too by his outrageous, reckless actions.
Is there, though, political will to stop a war in the House of Commons right now?
Yeah, I'm sure if there was a vote in the House of Commons, there'd be a majority to say we're not having any part of this war. My party wasn't that keen on the Iraq war, I have to say. I voted against the Iraq war and when Tony Blair joined George Bush. But I think it wouldn't be just the Liberal Democrats this time. I think we'd have people from probably all parties saying, no, this is a war we should keep out of. We do have people on the right, people like Nigel Farage, who's a best buddy of Donald Trump, at least he claims to. He was cheerleading for the war. I think he's gone a bit quiet now because he realises that most people in the UK think it's a disaster for our world and disaster for our economy.
British ambassador to MAGA.
Yeah, exactly. I want to read something, a Trump's Truth Social post about Starmer after the announcement one of the UK's aircraft carriers was placed on high readiness. He said, "The United Kingdom, our once great ally, maybe the greatest of them all, is finally giving serious thought to sending 2 aircraft carriers to the Middle East. That's okay, Prime Minister Starmer. We don't need them any longer, but we will remember. We don't need people that join wars after we've already run. President, in all caps, Donald J. Trump." Sir, what is your reaction to the President of the United States referring to the UK as our once great ally?
Well, it's sad in a way because many of us still see that relationship between the UK and America so important. But I think it speaks volumes for your president, I'm afraid. I think he's betraying everything that has made America great. You know, he claims he's making America great again. Well, he's not. He's losing influence. He's losing allies. He's ruining your economy. And, you know, there are people in the UK who think he's doing it as a distraction from the whole issue around the Epstein files. I don't know if you know, but in the UK, we're holding British politicians who were involved in that scandal with that paedophile sex trafficker, Jeffrey Epstein. We're holding them to account. We're holding our Prime Minister to account for having, I think, badly, using bad judgment, appointing Peter Mandelson to be the US ambassador, even though he'd had a friendship with Jeffrey Epstein after he'd been convicted. So we're doing our job holding British politicians to account. You know, I think Donald Trump should be held to account. And you know, some people argue, I don't know if it's true or not, but some people argue that he's gone to war, this hugely expensive, damaging war, in order to distract people from being held to account for the thousands of times his name's appeared in the Epstein files and his close friendship with Jeffrey Epstein.
Sir Ed Davey, real fast.
Let me say this. If this gentleman is on the money, that's a hell of a way to distract from the Epstein case by going into this war and losing the lives of at least 13 Americans and countless from other countries. That's a hell of a way to take the heat off you regarding the Epstein files. And to my understanding, they are trying to get it where Trump will be subpoenaed to come and testify about his involvement with Epstein. It's the last thing I saw, but I'll look into that a little bit more. Let's keep going.
Prime Minister Starmer survive the controversies that have come out and that have hit his government as a result of the Epstein files?
Oh, it's a good question. I mean, he's shown catastrophic failure of judgment, really poor judgment, and all the evidence coming out from the UK files as well suggests that he made a massive mistake. Right. Only time will tell. It partly depends on the Labour Party. He's a leader of the Labour Party, right, and that's what puts him Prime Minister. Depends what Labour MPs think. Certainly, from our point of view, he really has shown that he's made some serious mistakes, and he needs to answer for them properly.
Okay, so I think that gentleman had a lot to say, didn't he? And he wasn't afraid to say it. I saw where Craftsman said in the chat here that the where is it at? He was saying that the UK government, Europe is being led by liberal beta cowards. I'm assuming that he's over in Europe. Let's see, we have EL6092 saying things can get worse. If Yemen blocks the Bab el Mandeb Strait, 12% of global trade passes there. I had never heard of that strait. I too had not heard of Strait of Hormuz until this all happened. Okay, so we have Yoli Flores here. Welcome to the check-in. Nice to meet you. We have Craftsman saying, I thought a barrel of oil was $86 is what I heard yesterday. Yeah, the oil price changes, I think, every day. The Craftsman is saying it jumped to 120 for about 48 hours. So Cal Gibson said, "Baby feet Rubio," and he laughing. Yeah, I gotta find out what he was talking about with Rubio and him not wearing proper fitting shoes. I'll have that for tomorrow for sure. We have Craftsman saying, "I looked it up. All it's telling me is United States is charging $95 a barrel." Okay. Then we got Paul, welcome to the check-in, saying that Trump is a bad man. Then we have Abby saying, "Lord have mercy, that's highway robbery." Yes. But Craftsman is saying, but the oil in the Middle East is sold in American money, so that's probably why. And then Lou is saying that sounds about right. It's fluctuating. It spiked to 103.14 yesterday. Okay. Then we have Lou saying probably as they are a part of BRICS. Okay. Ray, welcome to the check-in, says it's done with the petrodollar. Okay. Craftsman says Bush, Clinton, Obama, they all went towards the Middle East to protect the American dollar. Okay, and then Cal Gibson is saying obviously Trump was going to bomb Iran. Everybody should have known that when he stationed 2 aircraft carriers off the coast of Iran. I didn't know that. I hadn't heard about that, Kyle. I did not know about that. I sure didn't. I didn't know that he had 2 aircraft carriers over there. Did not know. Let's see. Craftsman says that sorry, Obama dropped 50,000 bombs on 7 countries. Nobody said nothing. They said, okay, Craftsman said, okay, and our last 5 presidents did the same thing. Okay. I did not realize that he dropped that many bombs. I did not know that. Okay. So next up, so you guys know that Pete Hegseth and General Kane did like a press conference, if you will, the other day. And so someone asked him about the all-girls school that was hit in Iraq. Yeah, the first day. I'm sorry, it was hit in Iran. The first day. Yeah, it was hit in Iran the first day of the war. And I want to say it was 64 young girls that ended up being killed, and then 14 teachers. And if you recall, the girls' school was in a building that was a part of a base, but they ended up putting like a gate, a wall, if you will, between the school and the rest of the base. And I believe that there might have been some outdated intel information where that building was still a part of the base, if you will, and it got hit, y'all. And so they've been showing, like when we looked at, I want to say on Thursday, we looked at a video that showed like the hit and how the missile appeared to be that of a tomahawk, a very distinct end cap, if you will. And they've been asking, Trump and Hexas about everything, and we're gonna see what they had to say. Let's get into it.
We're not going to let reporting lead us or force our hand into indicating what happened in a particular situation, because the truth matters. So I can report that CENTCOM has designated an investigating officer to complete a command investigation. The command investigation will take as long as necessary to address all the matters surrounding this incident. And the investigating officer is from outside CENTCOM and is a general officer. But I will note to this group and to the world, there's only one entity in this conflict between us and Iran that never targets civilians. Literally never targets civilians. I look at the process that's used on dynamic strikes or on boat strikes and others. We have a very high fidelity process in that case. So we don't target, Iran does. We will investigate, we'll get to the truth, and we'll share it when we have it.
So, I mean, okay, I guess that's a fair answer. You didn't target them. Understood. And I understand they definitely want to ensure that they have all their facts straight regarding, whose weaponry hit the school. But I mean, yeah, definitely once they determine the cause or whose equipment it was, I would hope that if it's found that it was a United States weapon, that they will apologize. And I guess they also want reparations, if I'm not mistaken. I did see, I think yesterday, that China was saying that they wanted to provide resources to the impacted families of the girls that were unalived in that attack at that school. I saw that yesterday. So I thought that was pretty good that they said, you know what, we want to help you guys. If there's, let us know. We have resources to help you, that type of thing. So yeah, if the United States is found to have done anything, they would definitely need to apologize. I understand that that was not the intent to hit those folks, but these people, these young ladies are no longer with us. And so at the minimum, we need to apologize whoever is at fault, whomever it is. I'm gonna put it that way. What do we have here? We have Carlene Smith. Welcome to the check-in, Miss Carlene, saying Trump was expecting this Iran attack to go like Venezuela. Not, yeah, we were talking about it the other day. Like Iran has been, in my opinion, Carlene, Iran has been preparing for this, okay, for a long time. And, last summer they were bombed as well, right? And this time around, they were like, you know what? We are going to operate in a different posture, okay? And that's what they're doing. And so they have, apparently, according to what I saw, Russia is providing them with drones. They have Russia providing support, and so I know Trump has said, well, they're 90% depleted, they're, of this, that, and the other, but yet they still have something coming. They're still hitting you guys with missiles, taking out tankers, they putting out mines in the strait, so it's a lot going on, don't you think? We have Lou saying hello. We have EL saying Hiroshima was on civilians. Kyle says never target citizens. They are carpet bombing Iran. I did not know that. Okay. Yeah, that's what he said. Not targeting civilians. I guess they're saying that when it comes to military things, that's fair game. And I've kind of heard that from both sides. But yeah, we have James Pierce in the house. Welcome to the check-in, Mr. James Pierce. Lou says they must not have access to Google Earth. Maybe it's not classified for them to use it. I don't know, but I think on Google Earth, I mean, when I saw some of the videos about it, they were saying like on the Google Earth and different sites like GIS sites like that, you can see, that it's a school. You can see the wall that's built. You can see like the murals painting on the building and things like that. And they just had, I guess they had old data. That's all I can say to that. But we have Craftsman saying reparations and he laughing. We have EL6092 saying America bombed 13 children's schools in Iran. 13 children's schools? I hadn't heard that. EL6092. Was that with this situation or something in the past? Let me know. So we have Wild Dog Media quoting saying absolutely no war crimes will be tolerated. We have Ahmed in the house. Hi, Mr. Ahmed. Craftsman is saying we're spending billions of dollars to free 100 million people there. There's your reparations. Then we have Wild Dog Media saying we created Venezuela, so 1,000% different. Craftsman is saying Venezuela's stock market, everything is going way up. Venezuela's interest rate is already cut in half, but it was crazy high. I did not know that. Wild Dog Media is saying Iran is more like Iraq without the psychopaths. Okay. Then we have EL692 saying Trump fibs all the time. He is hiding the number of U.S. soldiers who passed away in this war. Got you. Got you. So we're going to switch gears a little bit. So we talked the other day about some attacks here in the CONUS, United States, at Old Dominion University, as well as at a Michigan synagogue. So I have a little bit of update on that for you guys. And yeah, so let's go ahead and get into that.
Hello, and thank you for joining us. People are on heightened alert following two active shooter situations in the U.S. today. The first happened at Old Dominion University in Norfolk, Virginia, during an ROTC class. A retired Army officer was killed and two other people were injured. The gunman, who was also killed, had previously pleaded guilty in the U.S. over connections to ISIS. And in Michigan, a truck ran.
Hold on. So the guy had already pled guilty, had been in jail, had connections to ISIS. Like, why is he still in America? Can somebody help me understand that? Why is he still in America? Like, if you're going to deport somebody, then these are the people you deport. People like who are affiliated with terrorist groups. They're a terrorist group, right? Like, and who have done something but had to be put in jail. Like, why isn't this person deported, but you have other people that are here in the States trying to make a life, not getting in trouble or anything, and they're getting deported left and right, being held in detention centers? Am I looking at something wrong? Like, please let me know. Why was this man still in America that then went to Old Dominion University, asked them, is this ROTC, and then went and unalived the teacher? Why are they still in America? Okay.
Into one of the biggest synagogues in the country, a security guard shot and killed the suspect who exited the vehicle armed with a rifle. Dozens of preschool-aged children and their teachers were in the building at the time. Officials are expected to give an update on that incident any moment, and when that happens, we'll bring it to you live. But first, we go to CBS's Bradley Blackburn for details.
Smoke billowed from the roof of Temple Israel in West Bloomfield, Michigan, as dozens of police vehicles responded to reports of an active shooter.
At least one individual came to the temple. Security saw him, engaged him in gunfire.
Sheriff Michael Bouchard also told reporters law enforcement was already on alert for the possibility of anti-Semitic violence in light of the war in Iran.
There was no lack of preparation. In addition, all Jewish facilities in the area are going to have a lot of extra presence around it until we figure this out.
CBS News confirms the suspect is dead. According to authorities, the suspect, armed with a rifle, rammed a vehicle into the building, the crash sparking a fire.
The investigation will look at who the active shooter was, whether the active shooter was in touch with other individuals. We want to make sure this threat stream is contained, and how, when, and why this individual mobilized to violence.
West Bloomfield Public Schools went into lockdown. Jewish facilities in the area were urged to do the same. Bradley Blackburn, CBS News, New York.
CBS News senior coordinating producer of the Crime and Public Safety Unit, Anna Schechter, joins us now. What do we know about what happened in Michigan?
Well, we know that a suspect rammed a vehicle into and actually breached the barrier of the synagogue through glass doors, drove down a hallway, and there were explosives in the vehicle that somehow either exploded or caught fire, started that fire. You see those black plumes of smoke coming out of the synagogue, which is really more than a synagogue. It's a school and a cultural center, a huge building, more than 12,000 members of this synagogue. So this is a big facility. Thankfully, everyone got out. Now, we did hear that 8 first responders were actually taken to a local hospital. So that is new from the last time we were talking a few hours ago. We knew that one person had been struck by the vehicle, a security guard, and was treated. He was actually knocked unconscious. But we heard that 7 others, now that could be related to smoke inhalation, we don't know. But first responders were treated. All the children, all the teachers were able to get out safely and are accounted for. But this is just an unbelievable attack, given the fact that you have the explosives. Now, we can also report that investigators believe that the suspect lives nearby in Dearborn, Michigan. So we are still waiting to get an identification on that person. But because of the explosion and the fire, the suspect's body was burned beyond recognition. So it's taken authorities some time to pin down his identity.
What about the Old Dominion University shooting?
Well, that happened a few hours before. Around 11 a.m., you had Mohammed Jallow, who previously had served time in federal prison for attempting to provide material support to ISIS. He was released in December 2024 and entered the university, entered into a specific building, and apparently asked, is this the ROTC class? Somebody said yes. He opened fire, shooting the teacher, wounding another person there, and then the students actually subdued him, jumped on him. One of them had a knife and killed him.
Can you talk a little bit about the motives that officials are looking into for both of these? I mean, we don't believe at this point they're connected, right? But this obviously is not happening in a vacuum.
That's right. We do not believe that both attacks, the attackers were working together. I also talked to counterterrorism sources. I said, was there some call to action by ISIS in these online spaces like on Telegram? They're not aware of one, but it's just this heightened threat environment given the war in Iran and given what is going on in that region. So we don't know that they're connected, but Both are being investigated as terrorism cases. That is the posture of the FBI and the investigators that are supporting looking at these.
So likely the synagogue targeted because of the Jewish population there,
Absolutely.
and likely the university targeted because of that ROTC class.
100%. And we just heard the FBI special agent in charge give a presser down in Norfolk, Virginia, and she said that the attacker shouted Allahu Akbar at the time of the attack. And that, plus the prior conviction on terrorism-related charges, attempting to provide material support to a terrorist organization, that is why they are investigating it as terrorism.
Quickly, what is the significance of that phrase, Allahu Akbar?
It means God is great. I mean, in Arabic. So, in a prayer setting, this is just a normal prayer. It's just that if we go back in time and we look at previous terrorism cases, there have been other extremists who have taken this term and exploited it and used it while carrying out an attack. So it feels like we're just going back in time to the early 2000s when we did see more terrorism cases, and law enforcement learned a lot from those investigations. And we moved into a period where even the tech companies, Facebook, Meta, they were able to root out a lot of the ISIS recruiting mechanisms that were happening in online spaces. I'm talking about 2014, 15, 16. And now, unfortunately, we are seeing a big resurgence.
Okay. Anna Schechter, thank you. CBS News national security contributor Sam Vinograd joins us. Sam is also a former assistant secretary for counterterrorism at the Homeland Security Department. So, Sam, Temple Israel is calling this a terrorist attack. The FBI is investigating today's deadly shooting in Old Dominion as a terror-related incident, and that's on top of this, quote, ISIS-inspired attempted bombing here in New York City last weekend. How much of a role are current events playing in what we're seeing?
Well, certainly there's been a longstanding threat from both ISIS-directed inspired individuals as well as Iranian-inspired and directed individuals to conduct terror plots here in the homeland. Recent events, including military operations against Iran, Israeli operations inside of Lebanon, and attacks by Iran throughout the region, certainly have supercharged various threat streams. We don't yet know the motivation behind the attack against Temple Israel in Michigan, but certainly the Iranian regime has a very long track record of both directing individuals and purposefully working to inspire individuals to conduct attack against Jewish institutions, Jewish entities, and individuals and entities perceived to be associated with the state of Israel.
When it comes to specific locations or groups of people, where is the highest risk level right now, or is it just evenly spread out all around?
Historically, it depends what threat stream you're speaking about, but historically speaking, Iranian-backed threat streams, as well as a range of ISIS and AQ-backed threat streams, al-Qaeda-backed threat streams, have targeted Jewish entities and individuals, targets associated with the state of Israel. But more broadly, Lindsay, there has often been a focus on soft targets, targets that are not heavily secured, and targets that are hosting mass gatherings, large groups of people. The goal is to inflict as much damage as possible in as high-profile manner as possible to inspire panic and to gain a lot of attention and notoriety. I will say, having worked very closely with the Jewish community as well as other religious communities, but the Jewish community in particular has really taken it upon themselves to hire their own private security, in addition to work that they do with officials from the federal government, state and local governments, and more. So a lot of synagogues around the country have very close partnerships with government at all levels, and then again have invested in their own security measures and protocols because of the very active threat environment.
Wow, that's a lot, y'all. But yes, Lou, one of the students in the ROTC class had a knife and neutralized the threat, as they say. And that gentleman was a retired, he was retired from the military, doing the ROTC thing, you know, enjoying himself. And they were definitely targeted because they affiliated with the military. I don't know if we're ever gonna. I guess at some point they may be able to figure out what the motive was, the true motive, but don't know. Then the other person, well, that was at Old Dominion, but the guy who was over at the Michigan synagogue, we have a little bit more information on what happened with him. He had some family members that were unalived due to, I guess, what's going on in the country over there. And we'll get into that. But what are you guys saying here first? So we got Mr. Lou saying noted, gotta get me a K-bar. What is a K-bar? We have Craftsman saying, why did Obama bomb 7 countries? Because they weren't going to sell oil in American money no more. Guess what? They're still selling oil in American money. Okay. So we have Muhammad saying epic mistake is costing billions. Muhammad's also saying Zionists are not Jews, don't lump them together. And wonder how much the US has lost, but all the base is gone. Okay. Then we have Ron saying terrorists that hate freedom living in a free country. Now that's a good point. As a matter of fact, there was a protest this weekend, yesterday, and I think it was for Kurds Day. Don't get me wrong. I think it was called Kurds Day. And someone was saying that the people that are out here protesting are able to do so, but would have been condemned had they done it back in their country, over in the Middle East. I thought it was very profound, just like what you're saying here, in the chat. So we have Wild Dog Media saying senior Army instructors for ROTC are almost always retired. Okay. Then we have Lena Gladney in the house. Welcome to the check-in, ma'am. What else do we have here? We have Craftsman saying everything happened. No, okay. We have Craftsman saying Lebanon was one of Obama's. Mohammed is saying everything happened because of Israel's actions. Craftsman is saying because I remember Obama got Lebanon and Syria and then the usual suspects like Iraq. Got you. Okay. So Mohammed said Al Quds. I know I may be not saying it right, and I don't mean to say it wrong. 'Cause I think okay, is it Al Quds? Am I saying it right? I'm pronouncing the Q like a K. And then we have Ron saying Dark Truth. But yeah, Al Quds was the holiday or the remembrance yesterday. I'm not familiar with that culture, so I mean no disrespect. Not at all. But okay. But yes, that's ALQUDS. That's the name of the event. Okay, y'all, let's go ahead on. I want you guys to see some information about the gentleman that was doing the harm at the Michigan synagogue. Okay.
This morning, chilling new video showing the man who police say carried out a truck ramming attack at the nation's largest Reform synagogue. Seen here 2 days before, buying $2,000 of fireworks he would soon use in Thursday's attack. After parking for 2 hours, the suspect, 41-year-old Ayman Mohammed Ghazali, armed with a semi-automatic rifle, plowing his truck through the synagogue's doors and right down the hall, first hitting a security guard. Then, a key moment, his truck jamming in the hallway.
Ghazali and the first security officer engage in a gunfight through the rear window of Ghazali's vehicle. A second security officer engages Ghazali in a gunfight from the front of the vehicle.
Fireworks, gasoline, and explosives packed inside the truck, igniting, and the suspect killed by a self-inflicted gunshot.
The smoke was awful. I couldn't handle the fumes.
63 officers treated for smoke inhalation. Investigators still searching for a motive, but they say the suspect had ties to the war in the Middle East. Specifically, 4 family members killed in an Israeli airstrike in Lebanon, according to officials. His 2 brothers, a 4-year-old niece, and a 7-year-old nephew. His wife critically injured too. Overnight, the Temple Israel community gathered together for their weekly Shabbat service, grateful that no members of the congregation were hurt in the attack, especially any of the 140 children there for preschool.
We sing these precious words with Jews all around the globe who.
Yeah, that's a blessing that for what that man did, ramming that vehicle into the facility, driving down the hall, detonating something, and having about what 60, 70 people have to go to the hospital that were policemen or whatever due to smoke inhalation, and to not have any of the children that's there in that preschool or any of the people that are there worshiping to not get hurt is indeed a blessing. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Um, and I think they said that he had what, a brother and someone else that passed away, a cousin or a niece and a nephew that passed away, and then his wife was harmed, not at the Michigan synagogue, but at something separate that had happened. So just a lot going on with that. Just a lot, y'all. So we got Sweet Chili here. Welcome to the check-in, ma'am. Yes. We have oh yes, we have Lou saying like, share, comment, and subscribe. Yes, if you are so inclined, please support the live stream by liking the live stream and also subscribing to the channel. It's free. Thank you. We have Sweet Chili saying here now. 24C here now. Okay, that's the temperature. 24C here now. Okay. That sounds cold. Okay. We have Ron Ligon saying people who migrate should be restricted from purchasing guns. Gotcha. Yeah, I mean, did you see the amount of fireworks that that he had bought? I mean, sir, what are you doing? Like they need to have some type of trigger, like, okay, if somebody buys X amount of stuff that's like this, maybe they don't need to, we need to, alert somebody. And maybe you need to like monitor the amount of things being bought in a database so if they go to different stores, they can be tracked, that type of thing. But I don't know. So we have Sweet Chili saying more lives lost. This is madness. Yes, yeah, more lives lost. This is madness. Yes. Well, in this case of Michigan, the person that was doing the harming, his life was definitely lost. I don't think anyone else was. Some of the police people had to go to the hospital for a smoke inhalation treatment. But then at Old Dominion University, the ROTC instructor was unalived, and the students took that man down. And one student used his knife and neutralized the threat. Yes, he did. Okay. So that's what we have there. And now I saw this video that I'm going to show you guys. It's about a person that he used to be, I guess, a jihadist. Is that the term? He's a former jihadist. And he said that he went overseas and he met someone of influence and decided to do this, but then he somehow left that community, if you will. And he was speaking more or less in regards to the two young men, that had threw that makeshift bomb in front of Gracie Mansion the other day. That's where the New York mayor lives. And there was like protests going on and they threw it, right? And then it ended up being caught. So he was just, I guess, giving his perspective about how he ended up being caught up doing all of that, and then, was able to be de-extrematized, whatever the phrase he used. And I think he was out of Canada originally. So we'll get into that. So Ron says, be ready. Oh my goodness. Be ready for what, Ron? What we getting ready for? Let me know. Tell me in the chat. I'm gonna play this last video.
Well, for more on the attacks here at home, my next guest, as I mentioned, he was actually a former jihadist who was de-radicalized. Counterterrorism operative Mubin Sheikh is here. Mubin, I'm fascinated by your story. I want to pull up a headline about one of the terror attacks that happened here. At 13, he was selling sneakers. At 18, he's facing terror charges. This is the young man who threw that bomb near Gracie Mansion, along with one other alleged criminal. You, in your case, were radicalized at a young age after you took a trip overseas and met the Taliban. How did that happen?
Yeah, first of all, thank you for having me, and my condolences to the communities, the Jewish community in particular, that's been reeling from the most recent attack. I was 20 at the time when I got radicalized. and went down to similar rabbit holes like many of these juveniles do, and adults as well. Just that grievance rabbit hole of the wars that are being fought in the Middle East, in Muslim lands, and using that as a platform by which we would then target the West with hatred, with delegitimization, and in some cases where it moves on to action, terrorist plots. So I went through that in my 20s. 9/11 is what woke me up, and I de-radicalized largely after that.
What do these terror groups say to a young man? In your case, it was meeting the Taliban overseas. In some cases, it's video game apps. What do they say to get in your head?
Yeah, it's really a combination between ideology and grievances. So here's a quote: ideology without grievances, it doesn't resonate. It doesn't appeal to the mind. It doesn't make sense. And grievances without ideology are not acted upon, because here ideology is an action-enabling idea. You know, there are grievances from, you know, what happened in Japan, the U.S. bombs on Nagasaki and Hiroshima. You don't see a generation of Japanese kids out to kill Americans. Look at what the U.S. did in Vietnam. You don't see a generation of Vietnamese kids trying to commit these sorts of attacks. It's because they don't have an ideology that tells them, hey, these attacks are occurring because you're Muslim. This is the reason why. And they hate you because of your identity and your religion. And that's why you got to lash out and attack them back. And that's the kind of ideology, and that's the kind of product that you're basically selling on the streets to these kids. It's like drug dealing. You know, you give them something that they're going to get high off of. A kid who's looking for a sense of meaning, belonging, purpose, identity. He's a zero in real life. And he goes online and suddenly he's Abu Jihad al-superhero. You know, he's from zero to hero overnight. And for kids who are looking for this kind of validation, unfortunately seeking it in online spaces with anonymous people, it's a very, very quick process to develop.
That's fascinating, and you make a great point with making those comparisons. So after you de-radicalized, you moved and you helped the government there in Canada, and there was a group that was intent on waging a terrorist attack. They were called the Toronto 18. They wanted to detonate truck bombs. They wanted to behead the prime minister. They wanted to storm the parliament. You sat face to face with these individuals. That's a very brave thing to do. I certainly could never do it. What were they like face to face?
You know, 4 of them were juveniles, and you know, the rest of them were adults, and they were like, the juveniles were they were just like kids, right? Kids caught up in the almost gleefully wanting to participate in an attack, thinking it the coolest thing. We went out there in the woods and we were doing a bunch of training. You know, because they had been watching all these jihadi videos online of these guys training. And so now it's life imitating art, because now you're seeing those videos. Now I want to replicate those videos. And it speaks to the same point about the stuff that they're consuming, or people, juveniles and adults, are consuming online. It's making them feel, you get what's called vicarious suffering. If you're watching videos of, you know, people getting killed and bombed and maimed, disfigured and so on, it's going to bother you. It's going to make you angry. And for some people who are not so stable, that anger can very quickly lead to violence.
Well, Mubin Sheikh, you saved a lot of lives with your work in counterterrorism, and we really appreciate your expertise. Thank you for being here.
That was interesting. Like, I had never thought about, like, how do people kind of get pulled into that type of you know, environment, being being radical. Okay, I've never thought about it. So that was quite interesting when I saw that. So go ahead and get that ready for the show here, because people may not know about that either. But yes, y'all. So we have talked about a lot of different things today. We have talked about the KC-135, the updates with that. 6 people have been confirmed dead, and so we are now at a total of 13 fatalities, you know, American fatalities. Okay. Trump went ahead and bombed the Kharg's island. um my goodness, Trump is sending out 5,000 Marines and sailors into the Middle East area. They're doing all that. And Trump said, like, look, if you guys, you know, do not open up this strait, then I didn't touch your oil production capabilities, but I may change my mind on that. That's what he said. Then we have the prime minister from Iran saying, look, if you have pretty much any American interest, like a stakeholder in your company, based on your land, you are now considered a target. Like we're only targeting, our enemies, things of that nature. Okay. They're saying you can go through the strait as long as you are not an enemy of ours, is what they have said. Okay. China is playing defense job because China's still getting their oil from Iran. And then you got Trump asking China to come send a ship to help stop Iran from blocking the strait. This is a lot going on here, okay? Then we saw the U.S. embassy got hit over there in Iraq. I'm sure that before, I would hope that before Trump launched this war, that they would have gotten the note to get up out of there. I would hope. I don't know. I hope they did. We also have perspective from like folks from the Qatari perspective, from the UK, all of that. Yeah, a lot of people are concerned about Trump and him fully getting his bones. When the war gonna be over with. And then you got P. Hegseth telling us, not to worry about stuff. Like you can't help but worry when you have the effects of the war. Number one, you got loss of life. Number one. Number two, we are already seeing increases in the gas. We're seeing increases in flights. We're seeing financial impacts already. And we're at what, day 15 into this thing? But yes, y'all, what do you guys think? Put it in the chat for me. Let's put this in the chat. So we have, let's go, you know what? Let's get to this poll here. So in the poll, I asked y'all if you had liked the live stream. I got 83% saying heck yeah, and then 17% say still thinking about it. Okay, well, I thank you for thinking about it. Okay, I appreciate it. I appreciate it. We got Ron Lincoln saying God is good. Great day, little lady. Yes, you have a good day as well. Craftsman is saying Iran's giving China the same thing they give everybody else. They say one thing one day and do something different the next. You about right. We got James K4X1T saying giddy up. That's right, cowboy. I got the pink cowgirl hat with the rhinestone detail. Yes. Then we have Will Media saying my local synagogue doesn't play. Our local Islamic center is protected by law enforcement after a minor incident a few years ago. Well, that's good. Definitely need to be protected around here because these people is doing all kind of stuff around here, driving vehicles into buildings. That is ridiculous, y'all. Then we got Gavo 8126. Welcome back. I know you've been here before. Saying Heck said is the original DEI hire, but he put DUI. That might have been intentional. Then we got Abby saying facts. Craftsman saying, and believe it or not, Iraq wasn't justified, but it's actually a decent place now, they say. Really? I have never thought about going to Iraq, but I would like to go to Qatar or Dubai or UAE, one of those places. That would be nice. Real nice. We have Wild Dog Media saying you absolutely cannot mess with energy, whether crude oil or gas. You must negotiate. That's right, because you're going to have a massive it just impacts everybody across the world. This is a global impact, which is what the people in Iran knew. They knew that. And so I don't know why they didn't, think that Iran wasn't going to play their hand, right? They have a hand to play and they played it. So they knew that they are right there at the neck, at the chokeholds of all this stuff that pertains to natural energy. They right there. So of course they was gonna play their hand. Yes, of course. And then they're like, I dare you guys to come through here. Okay. So we got Wild Dog saying, first time here, I hit the like button and going to sub. Thank you so much, Wild Dog. I appreciate you. All right, but okay, so y'all, I'll be back tomorrow at 7:15 p.m. Eastern, okay? For my normal live stream. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and log off, get ready for my work day tomorrow, and I will see you guys tomorrow evening. You guys enjoy the rest of your Sunday and be safe. Bye.